Story 1. My wife cheated with a wealthy investor and tried to justify it by claiming she was just learning about personal finance. I never thought I'd be sharing this on Reddit, but I need to get this off my chest. My world has been turned upside down, and I don't know who else to turn to for advice and support. Here's the story of how my wife cheated on me with a wealthy investor and tried to justify it by claiming she was learning personal finance. Let me start from the beginning. My wife, 36F, and I, 39M, have been together for 7 years, married for 5. We've had our ups and downs, like any couple, but I thought we had a strong foundation built on trust and love. We both had regular jobs, and while we weren't rich, we were comfortable and happy. About a year ago, my wife, let's call her Anna, began showing an unusual interest in personal finance. She started reading books, watching YouTube videos, and even attending seminars on the topic. I was supportive of her newfound passion. I thought it was great that she wanted to improve our financial situation and secure a better future for us. To be honest, I have no idea about finance apart from basic investments like mutual funds. I had no idea about investing. Even for mutual funds, I just know a very superficial concept about it and nothing in detail. In fact, I don't even invest in that, apart from a mandatory tax saving scheme. I'm from a marketing background with very limited exposure to finance. Even for the tax and exemption, I refer to my tax consultants, as most of us do. With the new age finance influencers rising on social media, she also got interested in learning about it. She wanted to learn about the stock market and cryptocurrency. The stock market is something that still makes sense to me because it has been the market forever, but crypto is way beyond my understanding. Initially, I did join Anna for a few virtual seminars, but the concept was just so alien to me. All these were going fine until she began spending more and more time with a wealthy investor she had met at one of these seminars. Let's call him D. She claimed that D was a mentor who was teaching her the ins and outs of investing and wealth building. The mentoring concept is on the rise in America. Every other person these days claims to be a mentor. She also eventually stopped contributing money for the household expenses. She said she was investing her money in our future, so I should not crib about it. I let her do so because I trusted her. I single-handedly managed all the household bills. I didn't think much of it initially, but as weeks turned into months, their relationship started to raise some serious red flags. Anna began spending an excessive amount of time with D, often late into the night. Her reason was that she was having a day job, so evening was the only time she could spare for her passion. When I expressed my displeasure, she got defensive and belittled me for my limited understanding of investment. She mocked me, saying that one day she will make us rich, and then I will regret not supporting her. I was supporting her by all means. She wanted me not to question her wherever she went, whenever she returned, whatever she did. I tried not interfering as much as I could, but when she was clearly displaying a red flag, I had to be alert. She also started dressing differently, more provocatively, but I didn't bring up the topic. I had never commented on her choice of clothes before, so this time as well, I kept quiet. But she began neglecting our relationship, so I confronted her about my concerns. As usual, she brushed them off, saying she was doing this to secure our future, so I should be supportive and not judgmental. Slowly, I started being cold to her because I was done heavy lifting the relationship alone. I thought she would notice the change in my attitude, but she didn't. She was too busy learning the investment game that she forgot I existed. We were no more than housemates and barely spoke unless it was something important. We didn't even get to see each other often, though living in the same house. After her day job, she was out for her seminar or for her mentorship class. One evening, I was passing by the seminar hall where her mentor D used to conduct the supposed finance class. Something urged me to go inside and check out the seminar. When I went in, I saw there was a very different event going on. I asked the security staff about D's company's seminar and if it happened every day. He told me it doesn't happen regularly, and the last seminar happened months ago. When I came out, I saw a few young men wearing t-shirts with the name of the finance influencer. I approached them and got to know that they were pitching everyone to join the finance masterclass. I took all the details from them. The seminar was conducted by the influencer himself every 2 to 3 months, but the mentorship classes were taken by mentors like D in cafes. They also said it was not a daily class but a weekly one, and the timing was 7 to 9 p.m. Anna used to come home not before midnight. I took the details of the cafe and left. The next day, I asked Anna if she had the class that day. She gave a curt reply, "I have classes on all days." I said nothing. According to the details I gathered on the last day, the class was only on Saturdays, and that day was Thursday. After my work in the evening, I dropped into that cafe and saw her sitting intimately close to D, his hands on her waist and his lips on her cheeks. They were whispering into each other's ears. My heart sank as I watched them exchange flirtatious glances. I stood at a distance to give myself enough time to absorb what I was seeing. I tried to capture some video clips because she would come up with BS like, "It was nothing like that." I stood there until they were in a more intimate act. He was licking her ears and doing all sorts of nuisance. I recorded it all. When they were about to kiss, I went and sat at their table opposite to them. Anna froze while AP was confused. I said I was her soon-to-be ex-husband, and he chuckled. Anna said that she could explain, and I said, "Go on." She said it was a one-on-one mentoring session. I was like, "Yeah, sure, he was mentoring you by lip to lip." AP left the table, laughing at the situation. His attitude was that of a player. I asked Anna up front if she had slept with AP. She said yes, but it was only a part of the investing deal. What kind of deal was that? She tried to justify it by saying that it was all part of her personal finance education. She claimed that D had promised that she would be able to make huge money after completing the classes and doing what he had asked her for. And what did he ask for? To sleep with him? She said yes. I knew she was trying to save her face by just giving any random excuses. I played along for some time. I asked if she did it forcefully. She said no, it was consensual. I told her she enjoyed it. She said she didn't, but did it only to secure our future. I lost my mind at this and yelled at her. Who gave her the responsibility of securing our future? I told her she didn't need to think about mine. I could do it for myself. I shouted at her so hard that people stared at us from nearby tables. I stood up and left the cafe. She followed me outside and tried to hold my arms. I shrugged her off and said she can go fuck her mentor and doesn't need to come to my home. I came back home devastated. My trust in her was completely shattered, and I couldn't believe that she had used the guise of learning personal finance to mask her infidelity. A few minutes later, Anna arrived. She said that it was not for fun. She slipped into his pants just to learn the tricks of money-making. I asked her to leave the house. She pleaded with me that it was not cheating. She has no feelings for the AP. It was just a part of the business. I don't know what kind of business she was up to. I told her there was no point banging her mentor to learn personal finance. She could earn the actual money by doing so. She got angry at me and said she would prove me wrong. She said I was too rudimentary to understand this modern concept. She got into that motive. I will show you how much I can earn. I'm getting into influencer marketing, and all you fools cannot understand the importance of investing at an early age and blah blah blah. She also told me that I'd retire with no money and just the state pension, while she would be a billionaire by then, and then I would regret this mistake. I told her she could do whatever she wanted, but not while with me. She packed her stuff and left. 2 days later, on Saturday, she came back. I was lying on the couch surfing something. She looked at me and said, "No, I'm not here to plead with you or say sorry. I'm going to take my remaining stuff." I didn't respond. She took everything and drove off. She was clearly unremorseful of her actions. She chose her cheating over our relationship. I'm in talks with my lawyer to serve her the divorce papers. I'm hoping it doesn't get dragged. We don't have any substantial wealth to fight about, so I'm guessing it should be smooth. But let's see. We'll update once all these are over. Update 1. Thanks for all the support and advice. Reddit. I just wanted to have a quick update about my divorce. Nothing much has happened apart from the divorce, so it would be a short update. A lot of people commented that Anna was not even close to learning personal finance. Seemed more like a scam than an investment. Honestly, I don't know much about it, but one thing is for sure. For anyone who promises quick money and double/triple returns, there is something wrong with that. Money making in a genuine way is not a cakewalk, and it doesn't happen overnight. Nonetheless, it's not my problem anymore. My divorce was finalized last week. It was pretty smooth, as I said. I don't have any huge wealth that she would have fought over. The house in which we lived was a rented condo. In terms of alimony, she earned almost equal to me. Also, she was the one who cheated, so I wasn't entitled to pay any alimony. The joint account was closed, and the money was split between us. We have no children, so there was no question of child support. Thank God we don't have children. It would have made the situation so complex. Now I get why so many Americans are against having children because of this uncertainty. Anyway, it's not as easy as it sounds. I'm yet to move on from her cheating. She has been telling everyone that I would go back to her, begging for reconciliation when she becomes rich after learning the personal finance tricks. I said, "Good luck." She told everyone that the reason for our divorce was that I was being insecure about her progress. She labeled me as controlling, jealous, and whatnot. I listened with a smile as much as I could, and then I showed everyone the video I had recorded of her cuddling with AP. She was hiding her face after that. Common friends were quick to change their allies. The last I heard about her, she was living with her mom during the divorce period. She is definitely not remorseful of what she had destroyed. I don't know if she is really learning personal finance and investing or if it was just an excuse for slipping into AP's bed. If she is successful in sorting her finances, good for her. I don't want such a kind of money which involves infidelity by either way. Recently, I've also started watching a lot of videos on investing. I may be jumping to the conclusion too fast, I don't know. But I think there are ample free videos online that give enough information for beginners. I highly doubt that you need a mentor for this. It is something one can self-learn. Right now, I'm trying to distance myself from any conversation which involves her. It was draining me mentally. I have picked up my hobby of painting to keep myself distracted. I have joined a fitness club to shed some extra calories. I'm focusing on eating healthy and keeping alcohol in check. I was drinking too much during the pre-divorce period, and I've gained a lot of extra pounds. I'll update the thread if anything progresses. Update 2. Hello, people. I have an interesting update this time. First of all, thanks for all the support and the relevant links regarding investment knowledge. It was really helpful. As you all commented, it was not a finance class. It was a scam. So true. The highlight of this update is, Anna got scammed. Remember that finance influencer who was holding seminars? Turned out that he was a scammer. He duped people with their hard-earned money, promising them heavy returns. Anna was also investing some 30% of her income in that scheme to get heavy returns. Not only that, I heard she had sold some of her solid assets like her family heirloom diamond ring and her platinum necklace to get all into the investment game. Looks like everything was just a scam. The influencer is on the run while his teammates, including the APD, have been arrested, and the investigation is on. After this news came out, Anna was mocked by everyone whom she had boasted about her upcoming riches. She was rubbing her newfound knowledge on everyone's faces and belittling everyone who had limited investing knowledge. After this news, all those people who were mocked by Anna are targeting her and making fun of her. Obviously, one of the common friends told me that she had blocked most of the people who were mocking her. She has also deactivated her social media account because people were tagging her in the post about that finance influencer. She was advocating for him, so yes, people would do that to her. You should not blow the trumpet before the victory, and that's what she had been doing all this while. For me, I have progressed quite a lot. I have shed the extra calories. Now I'm into muscle training, and I like it. As I said, I have picked up painting brushes once again, and it feels really good. I have not rushed into dating yet. It is not about getting over the past. I'm just not ready for it. Thanks for all the support. Update 3. Things took a very drastic turn last month. Just a week after my last update, I got a visitor. Yes, it was Anna. She looked miserable. She said that she was scammed. AP and his fraud influencer boss had duped hundreds of people and fled with their money to a different country. Was AP arrested according to the last update? I asked her. She said no. AP and a few other so-called mentors were the close aid of the influencer, and they were able to flee just at the right time. The other team members were detained in the absence of the main culprits. I asked her if she had come to me because AP had fled. She said no, she loved me. She insisted that we sit and talk. I reminded her that we were already divorced, so there was no point in having any conversation. She was like, I already been punished by karma. I lost so much money. I lost all the respect. People are mocking me, making fun of me. You came out victorious from this situation. What else do you want? What else do I want? I want peace. I wanted her away from my life, and at that moment I wanted her out of my house. That was what I wanted. She went on to say, now that you know there was nothing between me and D, we can get back together. If there were anything, he would have taken me with him, right? I said, no, he would not have taken you because he had many chicks like you sleeping with him to learn some stupid money-making tricks. He can't take all his whores, right? She pleaded with me for reconciliation, saying that she was not involved in any kind of emotional relationship with AP. She got swayed away by the thought of becoming rich overnight. I told her the patch-up was not on the table. I had moved on a lot by then, so her pleadings did not affect me at all. Had she pleaded with me when her affair got exposed, I might have thought about forgiving her, I don't know. But after seeing her true colors, I'm not a fool to trust her again. She came back to me when she lost everything. She was still mocking me while leaving the house and during the divorce proceedings. She wasn't remorseful. Now, when she had lost everything, she came to me. Unbelievable. I told her to leave because I had to go out for my fitness class. She said that I looked much younger and fit and asked if I was dating someone. I told her it was not her business. She started crying that I was being so rude to her. I told her that she should thank me for being civil to her and listening to her after what she had done to me. She shouldn't be allowed inside my house. I was still a very polite man who entertained her. She held my hands and kept saying sorry. I told her crying and begging didn't mean anything to me now. I used to love her dearly, but now I have moved on from that feeling. She left after I turned cold toward her pleadings. A few days later, her mother called me and asked if we could meet. I asked her the reason. She said it was something urgent and important and could not be discussed over the call. I went to meet her the next day for a coffee. She apologized on behalf of Anna. I hugged her and told her it wasn't her fault. She did not need to say sorry. She had always been sweet to me. Even during the divorce proceedings, she didn't badmouth me, unlike Anna. She asked me if I could reconcile with Anna because she had been very remorseful of her act. She was always crying and slipping into depression. She said she feared that Anna might turn suicidal because she had lost all of her savings, part of her monthly salary, and some precious jewelry pieces, the ones I mentioned in the previous updates. I didn't know Anna had lost her savings as well. Anna was always in savings mode, and I know for sure she had no less than $100,000. Losing such a huge amount of money can make anyone mentally ill. I asked her how our patch-up was going to help her cope with a depression of money loss. She said Anna really loved me, and at that time when she had lost everything, she could at least be happy that she had me in her life. I'll be honest here, I did feel bad for Anna. I also got slightly inclined towards considering the reconciliation, but it was for a brief moment. I quickly bounced back on my decision of not having her back. I told her I could not do this. I didn't love her anymore. It was again a cycle of crying and pleading to save her daughter from depression. I stood firm on my decision and told her to take Anna for therapy. She needed counseling more than a husband. My ex-ML was disappointed that I turned down her request but understood my point. There was one more thing that would have further disturbed Anna, and that was about my investment journey. I followed some of the genuine finance YouTubers who really helped me understand the concept of personal finance and investing at macroeconomic and fundamental levels. That knowledge helped a lot in building my portfolio. Guess what? I'm already sitting at a substantial profit. I have gotten into the stock and bond market. As of now, crypto trading is still beyond my understanding, and I don't want to get into unknown territory. I'm not rushing into things. I'm learning one thing at a time. Learning about the stock market has also affirmed my belief that money-making is not an overnight thing. It needs patience, also courage. I'm hoping to come out much stronger. For dating, I think I'm still not ready for it. Thanks for all the love and support. Now on to the next story. Story 2. The truth about my brother's disappearance years ago came out from a family secret. I'm trying to write this in a way so that no one will be able to research and find out who I am or my brother is, but it's the internet and everyone's a super sleuth. My brother went missing years ago, and when I say missing, I mean that his case was declared one of those creepy unsolved mysteries. It was on the news. I distinctly remember my parents interviewing for the news in our living room. I think I know what happened to him. I was very young when he went missing. I barely remember him, but I do remember that I loved him a lot. He would pull me around our block in a wagon. Most kids his age didn't do that. The days before he disappeared, I remember him staying home and babysitting me. I stayed in my room and played Nintendo 64 throughout the day. A guy came over. I remember him, he was older, almost our dad's age. My brother made me go into my room whenever I heard the doorbell. Later, after the guy left, my brother would ask me not to say anything about the guy. With my brain only being focused on video games and extra dessert at that age, I agreed. I didn't care, nor did I comprehend the gravity of the situation. The day before he disappeared, I remember the older guy coming over. I was in the kitchen and remember looking up and seeing him kiss my brother. They hugged. They didn't care that I saw them. The older guy waved at me and I waved back. Then I kept watching cartoons. I fell asleep on the couch and woke to my brother whispering outside our front door. "Don't worry, he's asleep," he said. The older guy said something I couldn't hear. Then my brother said something I couldn't make out, but I made out the words "visit them." Or maybe he said "visit him." Either way, I know the word "visit" was in his sentence. The man raised his voice and said, "No." Then I heard "plan" and "city." Then I fell asleep again. The next morning, the day he disappeared, my parents were at work. My brother was acting very strange. I remember he kept checking the clock. In the afternoon, I remember him picking me up and asking me if I wanted to go in the wagon. I was too hooked on Nintendo 64 and said no. He almost begged me and I said no again. Then he told me he had to run to our neighbor's house for something. I don't even remember what he said. I said okay. He reminded me to not open the door for anyone, only Mom and Dad. I shouted at him, "Okay, okay," because Super Mario was getting on my effing nerves, and he wasn't helping. He gave me a hug and told me he loved me and left. He never came back. All these years, decades later, and I think he was in love with that man. I know he was. The memories randomly came flooding back to me earlier. I'm not quite sure why, but it has been taking over my thoughts lately. I can't sleep because I keep thinking about it. I think my brother left with that man and they ran away together, or maybe something worse happened, but I don't think that's the case. My freshman year of college, I was part of a sports team that got national recognition. I remember my team's picture was on ESPN and with our university's name. A few days later, I got mail at my dorm. It was a gift basket. I thought it was from my parents, so I didn't read the card. I threw it away immediately and ate what was in it, but it was nothing but candy. Nerds, Jolly Ranchers, Tootsie Rolls, and Hershey's Kisses. I called my dad and thanked him for the gift basket, and he said he didn't send one, neither did Mom. Then I got to thinking all of those candies were what I used to eat as a kid. Literally all I ate for the earliest years of my life were those candies. I tried to find the card, but I couldn't. Then I began to think about how my brother would wheel me in the wagon to the gas station close to our house so I could get candy after dinner, even though it was a punishable by death no from Mom. Months later, during Christmas, I got an unmarked Christmas card. The only thing written on it was a smiley face. Since then, I've heard nothing. No one I know sent that card. I have never responded. I wonder every day if he's out there. I never told anyone this. When the police asked me what happened that day, I told them that he went to the neighbors because that's all I remembered, honestly. It destroyed my parents. My mom became addicted to painkillers, and my dad has had 3 extramarital affairs, which I know this tragedy is in no way an excuse to cheat, but it sure didn't help. It has ruined our family. And maybe my brother knows what he did. Maybe he regrets it and knows he can't come back home. But if I could see him today, I would just want to tell him that he is always welcome in my home. I love you so much, brother. We have so much catching up to do. Please come home. Update 1. April 12, 2016. It's 4 p.m. and I'm drunk. These past few weeks have been insane. I posted on here before. My brother went missing a long time ago. I thought he ran away from home. Long story short, I got into contact with some detectives that our family has known since my brother went missing. When I started asking questions, they told me that my brother was no longer on any missing persons registry. When I asked what that meant, they told me that he was removed at my parents' request. I asked my parents, my dad actually. My dad ignored me. My mom told me my brother is alive and okay, as far as she knows. They found my brother years ago, a very, very long time ago, and found out he was living with another man. He's gay and it disgusted my parents. He tried reaching out to them. They told him they didn't want anything to do with him and that I didn't remember him and wouldn't want to see him. I went ballistic. My parents weren't fazed by it. They sincerely hate my brother for who he is, for being gay. They kept him a secret for me all my effing life. My brother missed the birth of his nephew. He missed my wedding, graduations, everything just because of my parents. They lied to me. I've been able to get a phone number and contact information from police officers. My brother left it all open in case anyone from our family wanted to contact him. I still can't work up the nerve to call him. The address I have for him is across the effing country. But he's alive. My brother is alive. I'm drunk as shit right now because I can't deal with any of this. I haven't talked to my parents in weeks, and I never plan on speaking to them again. Not for what they've done to me or my brother. This is real and it happened. It is happening right now. I don't know how to process this at all. My parents let me believe my brother was dead or kidnapped forever, when in reality he just ran away, and when he wanted to come back, they disowned him. I'm effing crying right now. How could you do that? I don't even know. I'm so effed. I'm sorry. Update 2, May 7th, 2016. Here's an update for you all. The day after I made my last post, I woke up and called into work. I told my wife, who is essentially my confidant, and I tell her everything, the whole story. She wasn't really surprised. She's not a fan of my parents much, but like many of you, she told me to call the number I was given for my brother immediately. She insisted on it. She took herself and my son out for a day together so I could be alone to talk with him. I dialed the number about 7 times before I actually pressed the call button. Started ringing and I hung up. Then I got frustrated at myself and called the number back. It rang and I got a voicemail, but it was the automated voice, not anyone else's. I didn't leave a voicemail. I thought the whole thing was ridiculous. I called my wife and told her to come home, and she refused until I had talked to someone on the other end of the phone. About an hour of pacing and drinking 2 glasses of scotch at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I called the number again. It rang 3 times. Panicked. I hung up, but this time the number was calling me back. I swear to whatever God's above, I thought my heart was going to stop. I almost threw up right there. I answered the call. The first thing I heard on the other end of the line was a guy laughing in the background. There was wind on the phone. The person on the other end was outside. And it was windy. Who is this? It was his voice. I knew that voice. It was my effing brother. My brother who had been gone for my entire life. I covered my mouth with my shaking hands and just sat there. He kept asking me who it was. The guy in the background was trying to talk over him. He hung up on me. I called him back right away. He answered again. Me being a creepy a-hole, the first thing I said after decades of not seeing him and thinking he was dead, I blurted, "I got your number." He asked me who I was and what I wanted. I said, "It's me." There was a really long pause. I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard him tell someone to turn the radio down and roll the window up. The sound of wind stopped, and then he asked me my name. I told him, and he said that I was lying. I told him I got his number from the Missing Children's Network and detectives. I heard him gasp. He asked me what color shoelaces he wore to a picnic when we were kids, and I remember my mom getting mad at his orange laces with blue shoes. It was the last time we were together as a family. I could tell he was crying. The first thing he asked me was, "Where are you?" And I told him I lived a few hours away from home. Without hesitating, he told me, "I'm coming." He went straight to the airport without any luggage, bought a plane ticket, and flew straight to me. We stayed on the phone with each other the whole time. When he was walking through the gate, I knew who he was right away. He is middle-aged, salt and pepper hair, muscular. He looks just like our dad, only better. I know if I told him that, that would make him mad. I literally pushed an old lady out of the way, and I just hugged him. He's about 2 inches taller than me. He was able to pick me up. He was crying. I was crying. I was having a breakdown. We went to a bar at the airport. He wouldn't let me out of his sight. He kept holding on to my arm. He kept telling me how unreal it all was. He apologized to me. He kept crying, telling me he felt horrible. I told him to forget everything and tell me about his life. He's married. His husband is a doctor, a pediatric oncologist. They live in the Pacific Northwest. They have 2 children, girls 12 and 8. He works as a legal consultant and has his own firm. He has an amazing life. He told me that he thought I hated him and wanted nothing to do with him. We sat at the bar for hours, literal hours. I think we sat for about 6 hours before I begged him to come home and meet my wife. We got home, and my wife was a mess. She hugged him and insisted he stay with us. At this point, his husband was going insane and kept calling him. He had no idea what was going on. He thought he had eloped or something. It was crazy for a couple of days until everything was explained and out in the open. My son and my brother were like 2 peas in a pod. Honestly, I never wanted children. My son was an amazing accident, but I'm not good with kids. I'm always afraid I'm going to break them. But my brother is a pro. Kids love him. He stayed with us for 2 weeks, and in 2 weeks, everything about my life changed. His husband and 2 daughters flew in to stay with us. My brother-in-law and my 2 nieces. My family. They were my family. They are my family. My brother wants my wife and I to move to be closer to him. My wife is on board. I work as a professor at a university and have already started to send out feelers to see if there are any open positions, and I found one that is actually tenured in higher pay. I do not plan on forgiving my parents, but my brother still loves them. He went by their house and knocked on the door. My father shut the door in his face. My mother gave him a hug and told him to take care of himself. Then she shut him out. I can't forgive them for that. I have no reason to stay close to them. I want to be with my family. I want to make up for all the lost time. It's 2 a.m. right now, and I'm drinking a tall glass of scotch and grading papers. My beautiful, wonderful, smart, amazing wife is asleep on the couch. She likes to watch me grade papers. My son is asleep in his room, cuddled up with all the stuffed animals his uncle brought him. And I'm here so happy, so fulfilled. Now that my family has grown and doubled in size so suddenly, my heart is happy. I am so happy right now, Reddit. I am so happy. Update 3, November 21st, 2016. Hi everyone. A few months ago, I posted a notice that I had met my brother that my parents had disowned and didn't tell me, letting me assume that he went missing. Here is that update. I met my brother that was missing. Now here I'm posting an update over 6 months later. Thank you all for everything so far. Everything in my life has changed in the last 10 months. Honestly, I don't even know what to say. I want to apologize for neglecting this account. I've been busy. I want to fill you all in on what's been going on in my life. I owe everyone who has messaged and commented that much at the very least. My wife, son, and myself have moved. Not exactly to the same region of the country as my brother and his family, but much closer to him. I got a new job teaching at a new university months ago. While it's not a tenured position, it gives me the option to do research, which is my favorite thing to do. My brother-in-law's family has had many interesting discussions with each other trying to describe what has happened between my brother and I. They're a pretty open-minded and accepting family, so to hear what we have been through was absolutely shocking to them. My brother never told his husband the truth about his life, only that he didn't speak to his family anymore. Nevertheless, they welcomed me and my family with open arms when we came to visit. It was like we had always been part of their family. I feel content knowing that they are my family. When my brother ran away with his first boyfriend, he was verging on 18. He has elaborated and told me that the relationship with the man was abusive, and when he tried to leave and return home, our parents would not let him. So he was forced to stay with an abusive man because he had nowhere else to go until he moved away to college. This deepened my anger for my parents, but my brother still to this day has this ridiculous sense of hope and optimism. I love that about him because I don't have that. My brother and I are two very different people, but in a way that works well. We reflected on my teenage years, and I filled him in on what happened with my life. My brother is very quiet and observant. He always watches before he intervenes. He's soft-spoken and gently objects when someone says something he disagrees with. He's patient, kind, and optimistic, as I've said. He has a very loving heart, so I think that's why he has an unrelenting faith in our parents. Me, on the other hand, I'm abrasive, impatient, and quick to jump to conclusions. My wife wanted me to add about me. Doesn't separate laundry, refuses to mop the floors, and can't properly change the oil. Despite being very different, we have this uncanny ability to be thinking the same thing. Even though we have been separated for several years, we can still give each other a look and know exactly what the other is plotting. My brother has been able to create a spectacular life for himself, all on his own. One thing I struggle with is knowing that he went through more than half of his life by himself, putting himself through college and law school all alone. The more he filled me in about the years away from our parents, the more angry I became. I severed communication with my parents months ago after the last time I posted on here, and it has done wonders for my own mental health. But then the election happened a few weeks ago. In all honesty, I don't even have the words to summarize what this presidential election was. I don't want to make this political, but this whole thing by its nature is political and serves a great purpose. I've read messages on here of people saying that they too have been disowned by family for being gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, or other identifying. I have heard so many stories from Redditors across the country telling me that they are scared, alone, and afraid every single day of their lives, all because of who they fundamentally are. The day after the election, my brother and his husband were devastated. My wife, who is a black woman, was devastated. It's not just Donald Trump himself. It's his supporters, followers, and the ideology that took hold with so many people. Where I come from, Donald Trump's hateful rhetoric on registering Muslims and disenfranchising LGBTQ+ and minoritized peoples was heralded as something genius and revolutionary, but to me it is a personal attack on my family. I've been in shock and disgusted for days. I had to explain to my son what it all means and why the world is not always a good place. I had to have the same conversation with him when his grandparents did not like him because of his dark skin. The day after the election, however, I got a call from my mother. I didn't answer it because I was in class, but she left a voicemail and said she would like to talk at my earliest convenience. I thought on it, still enraged, but decided to call her back more out of curiosity than a desire to speak with her. When we began our conversation, she asked how I was doing. My answers were short, one-worded. She jumped right in, and I could tell she was uncomfortable. She apologized, but she apologized only to me. I wasn't fazed by this. I told my mother that she should talk to my brother, and unless she did that, then she need not call me anymore. I told my brother that our mother had called and apologized, and the look on his face was pure happiness. I can't even begin to describe it to you all. It was as if all of his dreams had come true. My brother called our mother, and she, to my surprise, picked up. They had a short conversation, and my brother's happy glow had dimmed somewhat. When he got off the phone, he told me that she said that given the election results, she had only wanted to speak to me, I guess alluding to the fact that I'm a white, straight male, the normal son, in an effort to repair the family, and that we all, me, my mom, and dad, not my brother, need each other now. She also went on to say she does not approve of what my brother does, but she had read up on his lifestyle and recommended conversion therapy. My brother ended the call with a very gentle, "I'm sorry, Mom, but I can't do that. I love you. Good night." I think my brother has been broken these last few weeks, and the hope and optimism that naturally carries him through life has been eradicated. He's buried himself in work and ignores any discussion around our family. My wife is a counselor, and she normally avoids counseling people she doesn't work with, but she's told me that the only thing I can do for my brother at this point is to be there for him and to never let him be alone again. Like I said before though, I have a tendency to lash out and be aggressive. Yesterday, While stewing on my own rage about my parents, I called my mother, and when she answered, I just began screaming into the phone. I unleashed a lot of things, and I remember crying while I did so because I was so enraged. I told her how much she hurt my brother, her son, and how she put his life in danger all for her ideology. I told her how unfair and upsetting it is that her and my dad would do this to their children, to my brother how it's criminal, and how they should be punished. When I finished screaming, I was going to hang up because she miraculously hadn't during my 10-minute tirade, but she cut in with a quiet, "He sounds grown." My mother acknowledged my brother's existence with that short sentence. Then she went on with, "I'm so sorry. Let me speak to him. Okay?" But I didn't. I hung up. Then I blocked her number. I don't know what she wanted to say, but I'm afraid it is something that could damage my brother further. We are currently staying with him for the Thanksgiving holiday. My view right now is this. My wife and my brother-in-law are sitting on the living room floor trying to assemble an IKEA shelf. My son is beside me watching cartoons and keeps telling his mother and uncle to shush, and my brother is in the kitchen washing dishes. This is a life that people want to see destroyed, taken away, and converted. This is a life I am so grateful to have, and it is filled with people that this world is lucky to have on its surface. I haven't told my brother that our mom tried to call, and I don't want to. I don't think there's a point. I just want to spend as much time and energy as I can trying to love my brother, my family, my small little slice of bliss. This is my heaven. This is a life I will proudly defend against hate and intolerance and bigotry. I am so lucky to have this life, these people, and this happiness, and I will never stop fighting for it. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Wife of 20 years cheated with AP, and I found out her bare pics and their future plans. Now I'm broken. I am 48 and have been married for 20 years in January. A little history. I come from a broken, violent, alcoholic childhood. Trust is key to me, and structure, safety, and providing are paramount to my existence. I met my wife when we were working in a restaurant. I was a manager and she was an employee 5 years younger than me. She lost her parents to a car accident as a toddler and was raised by her uncle. She has huge abandonment issues, is extremely emotional, and can be violently rageful in certain situations. She is mostly kind and loving, and the support and dedication I have shown her over the last 20 years has helped to quiet her soul and rage. When we first started working together, I found her very attractive, but I did not pursue anything because I was her manager. I had a part-time gig bartending, and she used to come down to the bar to see me and flirt. I didn't encourage her behavior, but I was always nice in turning her down. About a month into her coming down to visit, she came in one night, walked right up to me, jumped into my arms and started making out with me. This time I didn't turn her away. I mean, who would? Here was a striking young, full of energy girl who obviously was extremely attracted to me. I had just ended a 5-year marriage that was a huge mistake, and I had a young daughter. I was just getting back out on the scene, was fit, and enjoying the company of several women. Who was I to pass up on someone like this? We spent that night together, and I told her the next day that she would have to quit her job at the restaurant if she wanted us to continue seeing each other. She put in her notice that day. We were together pretty much every day after that. She basically moved in with me, and we went and got all her things from where she was staying a week later. I stopped seeing anyone else and even had to turn one of the other girls down when that girl came into my work and told me she needed to F. I told her I couldn't because I was in a relationship, and the girl said, "No one will know." I told her, "I will," and she left. My current wife and I had some small disagreements early on, and there was a lot of the dating games that young people play going on. I felt I was too old for all of that crap, and one night after she had decided to stay out with her friends instead of coming home with me, I went to our apartment, packed all of her crap, and placed it all on the doorstep. I sat on the couch and waited for her to come home. I saw the headlights from her friend's car as they dropped her off, and I watched through the peephole as she walked up to the doorstep. She stood there frozen, looking at all of her suitcases standing before her. I opened the door, saw the tears streaming down her face, and said the following: "I am too old for these games. I am here right now in front of you, and you need to make a choice. You have to love my daughter and take care of me, and I will always take care of you. If you can do that, then grab your things and come inside. She came in, and we have been together ever since. During the first few years of our marriage, I was clearly not ready to be the man I am today. I racked up 2 DUIs, and I cheated on her 4 or 5 times. She never knew about the infidelities, and after the last DUI, she told me, "I love you more than anything, but I can't do this. If you ever get another DUI, I will have to leave you." That was the end of all the drinking and extramarital stuff for me. I was 100% dedicated after that. I spent the next 20 years building my career. I took jobs all throughout the state, and we had to move an hour and a half away from our hometown for a job. My wife just couldn't do it. We had a baby by then, and she felt too isolated, so I moved her back to town and started commuting to work. For 7 years it was rough, but I did it to provide for my family, and so I got through it. Eventually, a spot came open in our hometown with my company, and I took it. Later, I was grabbed up by a private owner to run his businesses, and finally, another private group brought me on and gave me an ownership slice to run their units. After 15 years together, I had reached the pinnacle in my business life. My family was doing well, and I was making more money than I ever had. My wife wanted to go back to school to further her education, and I was at work so much that I thought it was fine. Work became pretty toxic, and that environment began to grind me down. I began to close off and internalize, and my relationship with my wife really suffered. We were rarely intimate, only having sex a few times a year, and she has an overactive libido. I was depressed and unapproachable, and really, I was just dying inside. My wife started asking to go hang out with some of our friends while I was at work. I didn't like it, but at that point, I was dead inside and just said okay to whatever she wanted to do. It was easier for her to be gone than to face her disappointment with me when I got home from a soul-crushing work environment. Her outings became more and more frequent, but I was okay with it because she was spending time with people I had been friends with for 20 years. I completely trusted everyone in the circle that she was hanging out with. I know I'm an idiot. About a year ago, I started to realize that this work environment was not going to work for me anymore. I was constantly at odds with the partners, and we were not even on speaking terms anymore. I started to look back at my life, and what I saw was that I had shut out everything that I had ever valued about myself. I had turned myself into a soulless ATM to provide comfort and stability for my family. I was barren of emotion. Don't get me wrong, there were great times as a family during those 2 decades, but as a person I was empty. I decided that after my wife completed her education, I was going to look for another way to make money, and I was going to try and recapture some of myself. It was during this exact time when my wife decided she would try a new life on for herself. One of the guys in the group, someone I had been friends with for 20 years, decided to hold her hand on one of those group outings, and that started a year-long emotional affair. During that time, I could feel some discomfort in the back of my head when she went out with our friends, but I was so dead inside that I just ignored it. I didn't want to face any more pain or discomfort at the time. We went on through the beginning of this year, and I noticed that my wife was becoming more aloof and distant, but I was still in no place to address her behavior emotionally. Then COVID hit. We were sequestered and locked down for months, and she later told me that she felt this would be the time that she and I could reconnect and revitalize our marriage. Unfortunately, I was still in the process of shedding that work life, and I was unable to bridge the gap. Initially, we started lockdown in April, and by June, she had decided that she was going to leave me when she completed her program. Of course, I had no idea. During quarantine, I didn't have work, so there were more opportunities for me to start seeing my friends again. My wife and I were invited to a wedding that one of the guys in the group was having, and it was the first time in over a year that I was going to be able to see them all. I was super excited, and I had a great time, but my wife's AP was forced to face what he was doing when I showed up. He started to cut off their interaction, and after a second gathering during the same month, he basically cut it all the way off. So now my wife of 19 years is facing multiple decisions. Her program was almost complete, her marriage to me was over, and the relationship she hoped to carry on after she left me was finished as well. She still didn't have the courage to tell me she was leaving because she needed my support to get past the finish line. But she had to start planting seeds for how her new life would develop. 3 weeks before she was to take her boards and get her license, she brought up the idea of taking a job at the coast, 2 hours away. She said it was because there were no jobs in town. She would make a lot of money at the coast and she could start working right away. She then said she had an interview the next day. I, of course, did not agree, and it was during that discussion/argument that I felt we were no longer having a conversation about my wife working at the coast, but that we were discussing her leaving me. I confronted her about what she was really talking about, but she wasn't ready to pull the trigger. I told her that I loved her more than anything, but that I wouldn't beg her to stay. I told her that she wasn't responsible for me, and she didn't need to feel guilty because I had taken care of them for the last 20 years. I just want to know what you are going to do so I can start putting my life back together. Took me a minute to get my wits about me, and then the investigation began. I got into her computer and found archived drafts of letters she had written AP over the last year. I scoured all of the avenues in her computer and discovered she had stopped syncing all of her devices the previous year. I started piecing things together, and then I found AP's name. At first, I was shocked, but a second later, I thought, of course it was him. I set up counseling for us, but it had to be through Zoom because of COVID. I had sent everything I found and how I felt to our counselor. We had seen her off and on for about 15 years, and she is really the reason my wife and I had lasted as long as we did. On the day of my wife's appointment, I was out driving around having a mental breakdown. I was driving through the foothills outside of town, screaming and howling at the top of my lungs. I felt guilty about pushing her away, and I was taking responsibility for the end of our marriage. I felt like it was me who had violated her, and I wanted to die. I wanted to point my truck at a brick wall and drive into it at 100 miles per hour. Just as I was calming down and heading back home, my wife called me. I didn't answer because I couldn't talk. Well, during their session, our counselor used AP's name, and my wife freaked out. My wife hadn't told anyone about the affair, and she couldn't figure out how our counselor knew. She went and opened my iPad and found the evidence I had scraped from her computer. My wife was frantically calling me to see where I was because, get this, she was afraid for AP. My wife asks if I have confronted AP, and I say no. She is horrified at the prospect of me contacting him, saying it wasn't his fault, and he doesn't deserve that. What she forgets is that AP and I have been good friends for 20 years, and his violation is just as much a betrayal as hers. This conversation follows the arch that many of the following ones where we settle, we talk, and then we resolve to continue trying with each other. We start going to counseling separately, and our therapist lets it be known that my wife will have a long road getting over this love that she had for AP. As I was not emotionally available for my wife for so many years, the therapist says that the affair, though only an emotional one, was strong and will be difficult for my wife to let go of for some time. It is gutting to hear this, but I know that I contributed to putting my wife in this mindset. It didn't matter that I had worked my crap off for 20 years, slept in cars, and bathed in mop sinks to provide for my family. What mattered was that my wife was left for all intents and purposes alone in our marriage. I felt tremendous guilt for that. As we progressed in counseling, I obviously struggled with trust. I tried to manage my desire to go through all of her devices and find everything. I wanted to know if they were still communicating, and I didn't believe that they had not been physical. It shouldn't have mattered because trust was broken either way, but it gnawed at me. I started watching videos and reading books about infidelity, and most of them stated that the cheater was most often expected to provide access to all of their devices and communications if they truly desired to reestablish trust. I hated the idea of asking for that access, but I wanted it too. I just avoided the situation for the time being. At this point, I was very weak emotionally. I was terrified that I was going to lose my wife of 20 years, and I felt no power to ask or demand anything from her. It was as if I had betrayed her. After 20 years, I was walking on eggshells in our communication. We did reconnect physically, getting after it sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. We had more sex in the first 2 weeks after I discovered her infidelity than we had in the last 5 years. It was amazing. The times in between our intimacy were excruciating. After a couple weeks, I could not shake the need to contact AP, so I did. I sent him a text letting him know that I had discovered he had an affair with my wife. I explained to him that I had placed her in a terrible situation in our marriage and that I understood how it happened. I told him that I wanted to talk it out with him so that the three of us could move on because we all shared a very close-knit set of friends, and I didn't want it to be awkward forever. The next day, as I was driving to work, my wife sent me a text asking if I had contacted AP. I lied and said no, and she immediately responded, "Don't lie to me." I would later learn that AP was no longer responding to her messages. Their preferred app to communicate was Snapchat, and he left her messages unattended. She deduced that I had contacted AP, and he was spooked. I fessed up that I had indeed contacted him, but I told her that the text was less about her and more about the long relationship that I had with AP. Wife was furious, of course, and immediately left our house to meet with AP at his home. I was an hour away for work and immediately set off for home. Wife was at AP's house for under 5 minutes before heading home. I called her, but she responded that she needed a minute. I later learned that she needed a minute because she was messaging him, and he was not responding. When she got home, she called, and we talked until I got home and then for an hour after before making love and falling asleep. She asked me not to contact AP anymore unless he requested, and I agreed. I was still a fragile little shell inside. This could not feel worse. We spent our days together, carefully watching each other, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Every move, every phrase, every turn of the eye took on its own significance and signaled something that had to be deciphered. It was exhausting. We started taking trips away from town, and when we were away, the shadows of AP seemed less looming. We worked on rebuilding this marriage that we had lived for 20 years, but there was always this whisper in the back of my mind. For weeks into the rehabilitation, we were shopping at a Lowe's, and as we were talking, an alert popped up on her phone. Wife looks at phone and then turns away to enter her code. Devastated, I knew that she was still hiding things. I felt like this would never be over because I didn't think things would end unless I did something. I contacted AP again and arranged a meeting which he agreed to. I didn't tell wife until the day of the meeting, and 30 minutes before heading over, I told her that AP had asked to meet. The light and loving face that she had been carrying daily turned to a nasty scowl. She told me, "I won't be here when you get back." I was thrown back, and I almost said I wouldn't go, but I told her, "I need for this piece to be done. What are you guys going to do? Talk about what a piece of crap I am." I told her again that it was about my relationship with AP and not just about her. I left and met AP at a restaurant. We took some shots and got right into it. He explained how he had just gotten out of a terrible relationship and that the attention wife provided him helped his depression. He said he let it go too far, and I said, "Yeah, the bare pics she sent you and the digital flirting were too far." His gaze fell to the floor and he acknowledged it was wrong. We talked for about an hour, and then I headed home. Wife wasn't there when I got home. She was driving around town, probably blowing off some steam, and was drunk, so I went to bed. She got home around 1 a.m. She had stopped by a couple's house that we were friends with and had gotten a call for a ride from our daughter. She woke me up when she got home and asked what was said during my meeting with AP. I told her again that it had not been about her, but that we were talking about how it happened and how we should proceed together. We talked for a while, made love again, and went to sleep. At this point, the ping-pong effect of being blissfully physical and emotionally betrayed was wearing on me. During one of my sessions, the therapist had emphasized that there should be no communication between AP and wife. Therapist explained that wife would never get past the affair with continued contact. I agreed. Therapist also said that wife should allow access to all devices to reassure me and that she should be trying to build trust instead of me doing all of the heavy lifting. When I mentioned it to my wife, she said, "I will give you the code if you want it." That was not the response I wanted from her. I wanted her to just turn her phone over to me and tell me the code. She was bluffing and I knew it, but I didn't call. Still so weak. During the next therapy session, my counselor told me that I was being a doormat and that I needed to set some firm parameters. She told me that at this point, I was trampling myself for emotional love for my wife, and if I didn't stop, we would never make it long-term. She told me that wife should block AP on all social media and give me full access. I told her I would bring it up with wife. Wife and I headed out of town for her job at the coast. And as we were discussing where to eat, I told her to find somewhere quiet so we could talk. I had been riding my bike over with her, and we would stay at a hotel for a couple of nights together before I headed back home for work on Wednesday. This was the third week we had done it, and I wanted to get the boundaries established before I headed home. We had discussed her blocking AP the day before, and she had agreed. I was going to let her know I wanted access to all of her stuff at dinner and make sure that she had deleted/blocked him on all her social media. I mockingly brought up the conversation I had with the therapist and laid out the list of boundaries. I was so afraid to ruin the good times that we were sharing that I had a hard time bringing this stuff up, and I never did when we were arguing because I didn't want to become rageful, say something terrible, and ruin everything. I was a mess. Wife was apprehensive about the code to her phone but ultimately gave it to me. She also agreed to the boundaries, and I felt like we had made real progress. Then I asked her, "Did you delete AP from Snapchat?" She responded, "I unfriended him." I told her that wasn't the same thing, and she said, "I did whatever it is, so he doesn't appear on the app." I should have asked to see her phone, but I knew she was lying, and I didn't want to screw up the whole night. We finished dinner and headed back to the hotel. I resolved in my mind what I was going to do that night. I hadn't slept through the night in over a month, and I knew that I would wake up in the middle of the night. I was going to take her phone into the bathroom and go through everything, and when I found all of the lies, I was going to hop on my bike, head home, and on to the rest of my life. Wife had to work early, so we turned in around 9 p.m. I had pre-packed all of my stuff, knowing that I would most likely be leaving in the middle of the night. Wife just thought I was packing to leave the next day anyway, so there were no red flags for her. I woke up around 3 o'clock in the morning, walked over to her side of the bed, grabbed her phone off the charger, and walked into the bathroom. I opened the phone and selected the Snapchat app. I had Google searched how to find friends in the app to see if she had deleted him, but I didn't need to because as soon as the app opened, there was an alert of a message from AP. I opened the message and saw that they had been messaging all through the night. I wasn't even sad anymore. Not mad. Not hurt. Just disappointed. I then went through her entire phone, taking pictures of all the messages, all the pics she sent him, all the texts to her one friend that she had confided in, and when I felt like I had everything, I returned the phone to the stand, got dressed, and hit the road. She woke up around 7 to 8 a.m. and sent me a text asking where I was. I just replied with a screenshot of her message to AP the previous evening. All of a sudden, wife was in a panic. All of the stoic strength she had presented the previous 10 weeks vanished, and she started begging for another chance. She apologized for betraying me, and she promised she would delete the app and allow me access to everything. She told me that she only ever loved me and that she would do anything to keep us together. I told her that we would talk when she got back home on Friday. That was 6 weeks ago. She did delete the app, and things have been going relatively well for us. This is an opportunity for us to have the marriage that both of us had always intended. I still have these lingering doubts, and I still find myself peering over her shoulder when she is on her phone. When I walk into the room, I watch to see if she is swiping out of some secret messaging app. I confronted AP the day I'd found her messaging him and basically told him to F off, and that he was ruining our marriage with continued communication. He ghosted her, but not before he made some belittling remarks about her, saying that he was doing his best to respond in a short and concise manner, hoping that eventually it would stop. During a later conversation with wife, I showed her that text, and she was devastated. It was gross to see her disappointment, but at the same time it was cathartic. Hopefully she would better be able to move on. My question now is, does anyone think we can get through this? My doubts linger but soften as time goes on. I struggle with thinking how they were communicating with each other while I was laying next to her or while we were on family vacations. I don't think she would ever do this again, but I am not sure that she won't wake up and just want to leave. I don't know that I might not do the same. All I want is for us to move on into our twilight years together, but I wonder if we will be able to do it. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Parents refused to pay for my college and said that I was on my own, then bragged about my graduation and sent vile emails attacking my aunt and uncle who supported me after. My 20th graduation from a pretty well-respected school, at least in this state, is in 2 weeks. We're only allowed 4 tickets per student. It's not the school being stingy. The graduation ceremony is held in the university's main auditorium, and it just doesn't hold that many people, and my graduating class is huge. I bought 3 tickets. I invited my Aunt Donna, Uncle Kevin, and my cousin Jeremy. I did not invite my parents, Esther and Frank. And that's the problem. It all started back in high school during my junior year. My parents called me into the living room for a family meeting. It wasn't about anything I'd done wrong, which was a relief. It was about money. They sat me down on the sofa, and my dad, Frank, cleared his throat and launched into this prepared speech. He said they were getting older and they needed to focus on their retirement. They said they had their own lives to live, their own future to plan, and that future didn't include paying for my college education. My mom, Esther, added that I was turning 18 soon, becoming a legal adult, and I needed to learn to stand on my own 2 feet. I remember just sitting there nodding slowly. I wasn't shocked, not really. I think a part of me had always expected it. My parents were frugal when it came to me, only to put it mildly. They weren't poor, not at all. They lived comfortably, but they were always careful with money, especially when it came to me. Asking for anything, even necessities, felt like a negotiation. New clothes only if I'd visibly outgrown the old ones, and even then, there'd be a lecture about how expensive everything was and how I should be more grateful for what I had. For a school trip, I had to practically beg them to let me go. It wasn't that they couldn't afford it. It was that they didn't want to. So, the college announcement, it wasn't a surprise. It was just confirmation. Thankfully, I'd had a backup plan. I'd spoken to my Uncle Kevin, my dad's older brother, a few months earlier. I'd always been closer to him and his family than to my own parents. My parents, especially when I was younger, were always busy. They had a very active social life. They dropped me off at Uncle Kevin and Aunt Donna's house, sometimes for the whole weekend. I practically grew up there. Aunt Donna never complained, never made me feel like a burden. She and Uncle Kevin treated me like their own daughter. My cousin Jeremy, who's 4 years older than me, was like the big brother I never had. So, I went to Uncle Kevin, not really expecting him to pay for everything. I was planning to ask him to co-sign a student loan. But before I could even get the words out, he said, "Don't worry about college. Donna and I will take care of it. You just focus on your studies." Aunt Donna immediately agreed, saying I was family, that they were happy to help. I offered multiple times to pay them back after I graduated and got a job, but they refused. They're both doctors. He's a surgeon, she's a pediatrician. So they're financially secure. Jeremy had already graduated from college, so they weren't facing any other tuition bills. Fast forward to the present. Graduation is rapidly approaching. I got the tickets, sent them to my aunt and uncle, and didn't even think about my parents. I honestly believe they wouldn't care. Since I started college, our relationship had become even more distant. I'd go home for Thanksgiving and Christmas, but even then we barely interacted. They'd be busy with their friends, hosting parties or going out. I'd usually end up driving over to my uncle's place, which was about an hour away. Jeremy and I would try to coordinate our visits home so we could all spend time together. Felt normal. Felt like family. Then last week, the phone call happened. It was afternoon. My mom called, making small talk at first. "How are your classes going? Are you excited about graduation?" Felt forced, unnatural. Then my dad got on the line. He cleared his throat just like he did back in high school and asked, "So, have you decided who you're inviting to the graduation ceremony?" I felt a knot form in my stomach. I just blurted out, "I already invited Uncle Kevin, Aunt Donna, and Jeremy." Silence. Then my mom's voice, sharp and strained. "You didn't invite your own parents?" I tried to explain about the limited tickets, about how the auditorium was small, but my dad interrupted me. He started talking, his voice rising with each word. "I've been telling everyone about your graduation. All my friends. I've been bragging about how you're graduating from a pretty good college. How proud I am. I'll look like a complete fool if I'm not even there. Your mother and I will be humiliated." That's when I snapped. All the years of feeling like an afterthought, of feeling like a burden, of feeling like I was less important than their social life. It all came pouring out. You haven't even asked me about college in 4 years. I yelled. You're always too busy with your friends, spending money on fancy dinners and vacations. You told me I was on my own. My mom started yelling back. We raised you. We put a roof over your head, clothes on your back. We invested so much time and money in you. And this is how you repay us with ingratitude. Invested, I retorted. You did the bare minimum, and you were the ones who decided not to pay for college. You told me very clearly that I was an adult and had to take care of myself. I reminded them word for word of that conversation in the living room. I told them that Uncle Kevin and Aunt Donna were the ones who had been there for me, that they were my real family. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. I immediately blocked their numbers on my phone. I needed to talk to someone. I called Uncle Kevin. I poured out the whole story. He listened patiently without interrupting. When I was finished, he said in his calm, reassuring voice, You did what you had to do. Don't doubt yourself for a second, kid. You're part of our family, and we're proud of you. Then 2 days later, I received an email from my dad. It was a long email full of justifications and backhanded apologies. He claimed they hadn't spent much money on me when I was growing up because they wanted me to be humble and appreciative. He said they'd always believed we had a close and loving relationship and that they'd only wanted me to be independent. He said they were devastated that I'd misinterpreted their actions and that I'd chosen my uncle's family over them. He begged me to unblock them and send them tickets to the graduation. He swore they wouldn't post anything on social media, that they just wanted a chance to repair our relationship. He even had the audacity to complain that I'd invited Jeremy, my cousin, but not them. I knew deep down that it was probably all a manipulation tactic, that they were just trying to save face, but it still stung. Ita for not inviting my parents to my graduation ceremony? Edit. A few people have asked for more context. One question was about why my parents were so focused on bragging about my graduation. My college is pretty prestigious. It's consistently ranked among the top business schools in the state, and it has a very active and influential alumni network. I guess graduating from there is a status symbol in their social circle. Another question was about why I maintained contact with my parents for so long, even though they were emotionally distant. It's complicated. I didn't have anywhere else to live during the school year. My uncle would have welcomed me with open arms. I know that, but I felt uncomfortable asking. I didn't want to be a burden. As for staying in touch, it was partly out of obligation, partly out of habit. I was so used to being on the periphery of their lives. Felt normal. And I admit, there was a small part of me that still hoped things would change, that they would somehow become the parents I always wanted. Date 1. Okay, I've made a decision. I'm not going to respond to my parents' email, and I'm definitely keeping them blocked. I reread the email several times, trying to analyze it objectively. And the more I read it, the more I realized they hadn't actually apologized for anything. They just offered a series of excuses and justifications for their behavior. They tried to make me feel guilty, to make me question my own perceptions. And then the surprise. My Aunt Donna and Uncle Kevin were originally planning to fly in on the day of the graduation ceremony, but they called me yesterday and said they changed their flights. They were arriving 2 days early. They said they wanted to spend some quality time with me before the graduation craziness began. I was overjoyed. Having them here in person made all the difference. We went out for dinner last night, just the three of us. I finally felt comfortable enough to talk to my uncle face-to-face about the whole situation with my parents. I told him about their email, about how they were claiming they just wanted to impress their friends. Uncle Kevin just sighed and shook his head. He said, "That sounds exactly like your father. He's always been that way." He then proceeded to tell me stories about my dad when they were kids. Apparently, my dad, even as a teenager, was obsessed with social status. He always tried to befriend the wealthiest, most popular kids, even though their family was, in Uncle Kevin's words, solidly middle class. Nothing extravagant. He said, "My dad and mom met in college at a fraternity party and bonded over their shared ambition to climb the social ladder." Uncle Kevin then got serious. He told me that a lot of my dad's current friends, the people he's so desperate to impress, are not exactly role models. He said he'd heard rumors of extramarital affairs, questionable business practices, all sorts of things, but they all maintained this facade of respectability, of being perfect, happy families. He said it was absolutely pathetic that my dad, at his age, still cared so much about what these people thought, especially when it meant jeopardizing his relationship with his own daughter. Hearing all of that from my uncle, someone I trust implicitly, was incredibly validating. It confirmed what I'd always suspected. My parents' priorities were completely skewed. They cared more about appearances than about genuine connection. Any lingering guilt I've been feeling just disappeared. The graduation is in 3 days. I'm trying not to obsess over what my parents might do. I'm hoping they'll just stay away, that they'll realize they've lost, but a part of me is bracing for some kind of public scene. Some attempt to embarrass me or manipulate the situation. Update 2. Graduation day finally arrived. And the ceremony itself, it was magical. Everything I'd hoped for. I walked across that stage, shook the dean's hand, received my diploma, and felt this overwhelming sense of accomplishment. My Aunt Donna, Uncle Kevin, and Jeremy, who arrived that morning just in time for the ceremony after pulling an all-nighter to finish a work project, were in the audience cheering louder than anyone else. I could see them beaming with pride. It meant the world to me. After the ceremony, we took the obligatory photos. Me in my cap and gown with my aunt and uncle, with Jeremy, with some of my classmates. We were all laughing, feeling giddy with relief and excitement. Then we left the auditorium. We were heading to a nearby restaurant, a really nice Italian place that Uncle Kevin had booked weeks in advance for a celebratory lunch. That's when it happened. My phone started buzzing like crazy. Notifications from Facebook, Instagram, even text messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. My Uncle Kevin's phone started buzzing, too. Then Aunt Donna's, then Jeremy's. My parents had gone on a social media rampage. They'd posted this long, rambling, incredibly vicious rant on multiple platforms, accusing me of being a spoiled, ungrateful daughter and accusing my aunt and uncle of brainwashing me and stealing me away from them. I couldn't see the post directly because I'd blocked them, but my relatives started sending us screenshots. It was horrifying. They claimed I'd been demanding they pay for my college tuition because I was jealous that my Aunt Donna and Uncle Kevin had paid for Jeremy's education. They repeated their tired old line about wanting to raise me to be humble and independent, and they claimed I'd run crying to my uncle, who had then taken advantage of the situation to poison me against my parents. But the absolute worst part, the part that made my stomach churn and my blood boil, was what they said about my aunt and uncle's miscarriage. They said that my aunt and uncle were bitter and jealous because they'd lost a baby a few years after Jeremy was born. They claimed my aunt and uncle were projecting their grief and longing onto me, treating me like the daughter they'd never had. They even went so far as to suggest that the miscarriage was some kind of divine retribution, implying that my aunt and uncle weren't worthy of having another child. It was a lie. A cruel, twisted, disgusting lie. It's true that my Aunt Donna had a miscarriage. It happened a few months before I was born. They didn't know the baby's gender, but my aunt always said she had a feeling it would have been a girl. When I was born, they were overjoyed. They've always been incredibly kind, loving, and supportive. To see my parents weaponize the tragedy, to use it to attack my aunt and uncle, to try to make me feel guilty, it was beyond comprehension. I stood there on the sidewalk outside the restaurant, shaking with rage and disbelief. I wanted to unblock my parents, to expose them for the horrible people they were. But my Uncle Kevin stopped me. He put his hand on my arm. "Don't," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "Don't give them the satisfaction. They want a reaction. They want to drag you into the mud with them. Don't let them." He said he would handle it. He said he'd contact his lawyer, that he'd explore legal options. He said that everyone in the family knew what my dad was like, that nobody would take the post seriously. They were sending us screenshots out of shock and disgust, not because they believed a word of it. We went inside the restaurant. I tried to put it out of my mind, to focus on celebrating my accomplishment. It was difficult, but my aunt, uncle, and Jeremy did their best to distract me. They told funny stories. They made toasts. They kept the conversation light and cheerful. They reminded me in their own subtle ways that I was loved, that I was supported, that I was part of their family. I don't know if my parents ever took the posts down. I don't care. I haven't checked and I won't. Update 3. It's been a little over 2 weeks since the graduation and the social media firestorm. Life has settled down somewhat. I've been completely immersed in the job hunt, sending out resumes, crafting cover letters, going to interviews. It's been a stressful process, but it's a welcome distraction from the family drama. I'm still living at my Uncle Kevin's house. Obviously, returning to my parents' house was never an option. Staying with my aunt and uncle has been a lifesaver. We have dinner together most evenings, watch movies on weekends, just exist together in this comfortable, supportive way. Feels like what a family should be. I learned indirectly through a conversation between my Aunt Donna and one of my cousins that my Uncle Kevin did in fact contact my dad after the social media posts. It wasn't a casual phone call. It was a formal lawyer-to-lawyer type of communication. My uncle, who has a friend who's a lawyer specializing in defamation cases, had a letter drafted threatening legal action if my dad didn't immediately remove all the posts and issue a public apology. Apparently, my dad initially tried to bluster and argue, but when he realized my uncle was serious, he backed down. The posts disappeared. There was no apology, of course, but I didn't expect one. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? That my parents would finally realize they'd gone too far, that they'd burned the bridge beyond repair. You'd be wrong. A few days ago, I received another email. I had my guard up, of course. After the graduation fiasco, I'd become hypervigilant about checking sender addresses before opening anything. This one was from a new email account, one I didn't recognize. The subject line was simply, "We need to talk, Mom and Dad." My initial instinct was to delete it, to block the sender and pretend it never happened. But curiosity, that insidious little voice, got the better of me. I told myself I just wanted to see what they could possibly say after everything that had happened. I opened the email. It was shorter than the previous one, but no less manipulative. They started by saying they were deeply disappointed in my behavior. They accused me of being ungrateful and disrespectful. They reiterated their claim that my Uncle Kevin and Aunt Donna were manipulating me, that they didn't have my best interests at heart. Then they shifted tactics. They said they'd been talking to a family counselor, I highly doubted this, and that the counselor had suggested they try to reach out to me one last time to offer an olive branch. They said they were willing to forgive me for my transgressions if I would agree to meet with them in person to discuss our issues. They suggested we meet at a neutral location. They even proposed a specific date and time. I didn't reply. I didn't even consider it. But in a moment of weakness, I didn't block the email address right away. I told myself I was just keeping my options open, gathering information. It was a stupid mistake. 2 days later, another email arrived from the same address. This one was different. This one was vile. The subject line was, "Disappointed in you, Mom and Dad." I hesitated, but again that morbid curiosity won out. I opened it. It started with the usual accusations that I was being ungrateful, disrespectful, that I'd been brainwashed by my uncle and aunt. But then it took a dark, disturbing turn. They said that my uncle threatening legal action was proof that he was hiding something. They claimed that he and my aunt were unstable and unfit to be around me. And then they repeated that horrific lie about my aunt's miscarriage. They said, and I'm quoting here, "The only reason they lost their baby was because they weren't the right kind of people to have a girl. God made your aunt have that miscarriage because he knew they weren't fit to be parents. They told me to wake up and come home before it's too late." This time, I didn't hesitate. I slammed my laptop shut. I immediately blocked the email address. Then I did something I hadn't done in weeks. I cried. Not quiet, dignified tears, but ugly, gasping sobs. I haven't told my Uncle Kevin or Aunt Donna about this latest email. I can't bring myself to do it. I know how much it would hurt them. They've been so kind. I don't want to burden them with my parents' toxic vitriol. I'm keeping it to myself for now, but it's eating at me. I feel like I need to do something, but I don't know what. Date for. It's been a couple of months now. The biggest news. I got a job. It's an entry-level position. It's not exactly my dream job, but it's a foot in the door, and it's in my field. The work is interesting enough, and the people are surprisingly nice. My direct supervisor is a young woman, maybe late 20s, and she's been incredibly supportive and helpful. And I moved out of my Uncle Kevin's house. That was a big step. I've been feeling a little guilty, like I was overstaying my welcome, even though they insisted I wasn't. I found a small one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood about a 15-minute drive from my uncle and aunt's place. The first few nights were strange. I was used to the sounds of my uncle's house. My apartment was silent, but I'm adjusting. I bought some cheap furniture from a thrift store, hung some posters on the walls, and started to make it feel like home. I even adopted a cat, a scruffy little tabby. He's been a great companion, a furry little ball of chaos that keeps me entertained. I still see my Aunt Donna and Uncle Kevin regularly. I go over for dinner at least once a week, sometimes more. As for my parents' silence, I haven't heard from them since that last hateful email. I've blocked them on every platform I can think of: email, social media, phone. I've even considered changing my phone number just to be sure. I've heard through the family grapevine, my cousin Jeremy keeps me updated, much to my aunt's disapproval, that they're still living their lives as if nothing happened. They're still going to their fancy dinner parties, still posting carefully curated pictures on Instagram, still pretending to be the perfect, happy family. I guess some things never change. I've also started seeing a therapist. It was Uncle Kevin's suggestion, actually. He noticed I was still struggling even after getting the job and moving out. He gently suggested that talking to a professional might help me process everything that had happened. I was hesitant at first. I'd always been a pretty private person, not one to share my feelings easily, but I trusted my uncle, and I knew he was right. I'm focusing on building my own life. I'm focusing on my career, my furry little companion cat. Thanks, Reddit, for everything you have done for me. Now on to the next story. Story 5. I found out my wife and her best friend were planning to frame me for cheating so she could leave me for her high school ex. Then she got pregnant and claimed it was mine. I always saw myself as a pretty average guy, nothing special or extravagant. I grew up in a small town with hardworking parents who instilled in me the values of honesty, loyalty, and perseverance. I followed the typical path. Graduated high school, went to a local college, and landed a stable job. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and allowed me to live comfortably. That's why I have zero idea about how to react to this unexpected situation. I am sorry if this seems like a huge rant. It all starts with my wife, Stella, and what she did. Stella and I met in college during our senior year. She was a driven and ambitious woman majoring in business management with a clear plan for her future. We started dating after meeting at a mutual friend's party, and it didn't take long for me to fall head over heels for her. Stella was everything I thought I wanted. Smart, funny, and beautiful. She seemed to share my values, and we had similar goals. Felt like a perfect match. After 3 years of dating, I proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a quiet moment in our favorite park, but it was enough for both of us. We were married the following year, and for the first few years, things were great. We bought a modest house in a suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where everyone knows each other's name and kids play in the street without fear. We talked about starting a family, and it all seemed so promising. If only I knew. But as the years went on, subtle changes began to creep into our lives. Stella's job became more demanding, and she started working longer hours. At first, I didn't think much of it. I knew she was career-oriented, and I supported her ambitions. But there were other changes too, things that were harder to brush off. She became increasingly preoccupied with her appearance, which was out of character for her. Stella had never been the type to spend hours getting ready or obsess over fashion trends, but suddenly she was buying new clothes, hitting the gym regularly, and spending an unusual amount of time on her hair and makeup. When I asked her about it, she shrugged it off, saying she just wanted to look and feel her best. I wanted to be supportive, so I didn't push further. Then there was the matter of her phone. A month ago, my phone mysteriously went missing. I remember the day clearly. We were out grocery shopping, and I realized I didn't have my phone with me. I assumed I'd left it at home, but when we got back, it was nowhere to be found. I searched every corner of the house and retraced my steps from the entire day, but it was gone. Stella's reaction was odd, to say the least. She was unusually calm about the whole thing, almost indifferent. She suggested I just get a new phone and forget about it. When I mentioned reporting it as stolen, she was adamant that it wasn't worth the hassle. Her insistence was strange, but I chalked it up to her not wanting to deal with the stress of replacing a phone. After all, she was under a lot of pressure at work, and I didn't want to add to her burdens. So I let it go and bought a new phone. But then other things started to feel off. Stella was spending more time away from home, claiming she had to work late or attend business meetings. When she was home, she was constantly on her phone, texting or browsing social media. I noticed she'd become more secretive, often stepping out of the room to take calls or closing her laptop when I entered the room. One time we were having dinner and I could hear her phone ringing, so I asked her who it was. It wasn't out of suspicion. It was a simple question, but Stella didn't take it like that. She got defensive and somehow turned it into an argument. It wasn't like her to be so guarded, and it made me uneasy. One evening, while Stella was out running errands, I was home alone trying to shake off the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I started going through our shared computer. We both had our own laptops, but we also had a desktop computer that we rarely used. As I sifted through the files, I found a folder buried deep in the drive. It was labeled with a random string of numbers, something that didn't catch the eye unless you were specifically looking for it. When I opened the folder, I found a series of documents and screenshots that made my blood run cold. There were messages between Stella and a man named John. I didn't recognize the name at first, but as I read through the messages, I realized this was her high school sweetheart. The messages weren't explicit, but they were intimate. They talked about their past, reminiscing about old memories and making plans to meet up. But it wasn't just the messages that disturbed me. There were screenshots of conversations between Stella and her best friend, Cindy. They were talking about me, but not in the way you'd expect. They were discussing a plan, an elaborate scheme to frame me for cheating. The missing phone? That was part of it. They'd somehow gotten hold of it, and they were going to use it to prove I'd been unfaithful. The plan was designed to make me look like the villain, allowing Stella to leave me without any guilt and move on with John. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My wife, the woman I devoted my life to, was plotting to destroy me. And for what? To rekindle a flame with a man from her past? It didn't make sense, but there it was, laid out in black and white. Over the next few days, I tried to act normal, all while secretly gathering as much information as I could. I documented everything, took screenshots, copied files, and even started recording conversations. I knew I needed to protect myself because Stella wasn't going to play fair. Then things escalated. I overheard a conversation between Stella and her mother one evening when she thought I was out of the house. They were talking in hushed tones, but I caught enough to piece together the full extent of their plan. Stella's mother was in on it too. She was coaching Stella on how to manipulate the situation and how to make it look like I was the one at fault. They talked about how they'd introduce John and his kids into our home once I was out of the picture. It was like they were planning a hostile takeover of my life. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman I loved and her own mother were plotting to ruin me. It was like something out of a bad movie, but it was my life. I knew I had to act fast before they could execute their plan. But I didn't confront Stella right away. Instead, I decided to turn the tables. I reached out to a lawyer, explaining the situation and seeking advice. I also started planting seeds of doubt in Stella's mind, making subtle comments about how strange it was that our marriage seemed to be drifting apart. I wanted her to think I was clueless, that I didn't suspect a thing. Then came the final straw. One night Stella came home late, reeking of alcohol. She was clearly agitated, her face flushed and her hands trembling. She didn't even try to hide the fact that she'd been out drinking with John. She stumbled into the kitchen, mumbling something about how things weren't going according to plan. She didn't realize I was standing in the doorway, listening to every word. The next day I confronted her, but not in the way she expected. I told her I knew about her plan and that I was ready to walk away without any drama if she was. The look on her face was priceless. She was stunned, speechless, and for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. She didn't deny anything, but she didn't apologize either. She just stood there, frozen like a deer caught in headlights. We had a long, awkward conversation after that. It was clear that Stella wasn't prepared for things to unravel so quickly. She tried to salvage what she could, offering to end things with John and work on our marriage. But it was too late. The damage was done and there was no going back. We agreed to separate and I moved out of the house the next day. I stayed with a friend while we sorted out the logistics of our separation. It was a painful process, but I knew it was the right decision. I couldn't stay in a marriage built on lies and deceit. But things weren't as simple as I thought they'd be. A few days after I moved out, Stella reached out to me, asking if we could meet to talk. I agreed, thinking she wanted to finalize the details of our separation. But when we met, she dropped a bombshell. She was pregnant. At first, I didn't believe her. I thought it was another ploy to keep me in her web, another manipulative tactic to control me. But she showed me the positive test and the timeline matched up. She insisted that the baby was mine. And now, Reddit, here I am, stuck with this nagging doubt. I don't know what the future holds, and I'm struggling to make the right decision. I keep asking myself if I'm being selfish and if I'm letting my hurt and anger cloud my judgment. But at the same time, I can't ignore everything that Stella did, all the lies and manipulation. I know that even if the baby is mine, our relationship will never be the same. So Reddit, am I wrong for confronting my wife about her plan and thinking about walking away without trying to save our marriage? Would it have been worth fighting for? Or was I right to cut my losses and move on? Date 1. Hi everyone. First I want to thank you all for your support and advice. Since my last post, I've been trying to process everything that's happened, but it's been tough. Stella has been relentless in her attempts to contact me, making it impossible for me to think clearly. I moved out and checked into a hotel, hoping to get some space, but she hasn't respected that at all. She's been calling non-stop, leaving voicemails, and even showing up at my work unannounced. It's like she's in full panic mode, desperate to reel me back in before I can slip away completely. I told Stella I needed time to think and process everything before making any decisions, but it seemed like she was in full panic mode. She's even enlisted her mother to call me, pleading with me to come back home and fix things. It's overwhelming, and I feel like I'm being pulled in a million different directions. The decision to request a paternity test weighed heavily on me, but I knew it was something I had to do before I could move forward. When I finally told Stella, she was devastated. She cried, pleaded, and accused me of not trusting her, but I stood firm. I can't make any commitments until I know the truth. The wait for the test results has been excruciating, and I'm stuck in this horrible limbo, not knowing what my future holds. Then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I received a call from John, Stella's high school sweetheart and the guy she's been seeing behind my back. His tone was hostile right from the start. He accused me of trying to ruin Stella's life, claiming that I was the one who pushed her to reconnect with him because I wasn't man enough to keep her happy. He said that Stella deserved to be with someone who truly cared for her and who wouldn't question her loyalty. The conversation quickly escalated into a thinly veiled threat. John told me that if I didn't drop the paternity test and come back to Stella, he'd make sure I'd regret it. His words sent a chill down my spine. I didn't know what he was capable of, but the way he spoke made it clear that he was serious. He warned me that Stella was fragile and that if anything happened to her because of the stress I was putting her under, I'd have blood on my hands. It was pure manipulation, trying to guilt me into returning to Stella and dropping everything. But his threats only strengthened my resolve. I couldn't be bullied into making a decision that I knew wasn't right for me or for the potential child. After that call, I felt even more paranoid. I started to wonder just how deep this whole situation went. Was John working with Stella and her mother to manipulate me? How far were they willing to go to get what they wanted? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I couldn't trust any of them. I needed to stay focused on the truth, and the only way to do that was to wait for the paternity test results. The next day, I got a call from the clinic where the paternity test was being processed. They told me the results would be ready sooner than expected, which was both a relief and a new source of anxiety. I didn't know what to hope for, Part of me wanted the child to be mine, but another part feared what that would mean for my future. If the baby was mine, I'd be tied to Stella forever, and I wasn't sure I could handle that after everything that had happened. While waiting for the results, I started going over everything that had happened in the past few months, trying to piece together the truth. I thought about the way Stella had become more distant, the strange phone calls she'd take in the other room, and the odd excuses for why she had to stay late at work. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Everyone has periods of stress or business. But now it all seems so clear. She'd been planning this for a long time, and I was just too blind to see it. I also began to notice small things that didn't add up. For example, Stella's sudden interest in our finances. She'd never been particularly involved in managing our money, but over the past few months, she started asking more questions about our savings, investments, and insurance policies. At first, I thought she was just trying to be more responsible, but now I'm starting to wonder if there was a more sinister motive behind it. I'm also starting to question the role Stella's mother has played in all of this. She's always been overly involved in Stella's life, almost to the point of being controlling. Looking back, I can see how she's been subtly influencing Stella's decisions, pushing her towards this relationship with John and away from me. It makes me wonder if this was her plan all along, to break up our marriage and push Stella into the arms of someone she deemed more suitable. As I wait for the paternity test results, I can't help but feel like I'm living in some kind of nightmare. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and my future has been turned upside down. I feel like I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering who's watching me, who's plotting against me, and what their next move will be. I'll update you all as soon as I have the paternity test results. For now, I'm just trying to keep my head above water and figure out what my next step should be. Thanks again for all your support. I couldn't get through this without you. Update 2. Hi everyone. Things have been very chaotic, and I knew I needed something to make sense of it all. After the call from John and the tension of waiting for the paternity test results, I realized there was one person I hadn't considered in all of this. Cindy, Stella's best friend. I'd always known that Cindy and Stella were close, practically inseparable, but I hadn't thought much about her role in all of this until now. The last time, when I came across a few old text messages between Stella and Cindy, I had transferred some of them to my phone. But now, with everything going on, those messages took on a whole new meaning. They weren't just casual chats between friends. There was something deeper, something more sinister hidden in those exchanges. It was clear Cindy had known about John all along, and not just known, but actively encouraged and facilitated their relationship. I knew Cindy wasn't just a bystander in this mess. She was an active participant, and the only way I could prove that it wasn't some innocent mistake was by getting her best friend's word. She had played a big part in making all of this happen, and that made her just as guilty as Stella and John. I knew I had to confront her, but I needed to be smart about it. Cindy is clever, and I couldn't let her slip away without getting the full story. I decided to reach out to her and let her know that I knew everything about her involvement. I figured if I backed her into a corner, she might just tell me how it all began. When I called Cindy, I somehow kept my voice steady, masking the anger boiling inside me. I told her we needed to talk, and to my surprise, she agreed to meet up right away. We met at a small cafe on the outskirts of town, a place we both knew but rarely visited. It felt safer there, away from prying eyes. As soon as we sat down, I didn't waste any time. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her I knew about John, about the affair, and about her role in all of it. Cindy's face paled. For a moment, she looked like she was about to deny everything, but then she seemed to realize that there was no point. I had already caught her, and the only way out was through the truth. At least that's what I was counting on. She took a deep breath and began to talk, her voice shaky at first but growing steadier as she went on. According to Cindy, it all started innocently enough. John and Stella had reconnected on social media. Stella had been feeling down, complaining to Cindy about how our marriage had lost its spark, how she felt unappreciated and stuck in a rut. Cindy, instead of encouraging Stella to work on our marriage, suggested that she reach out to old friends, specifically John, who had recently gone through a messy divorce himself. Stella took Cindy's advice and sent John a message. What began as a simple catch-up quickly spiraled into something more. John was charming and attentive, and he made Stella feel like the center of the universe. They started talking more frequently, sharing their frustrations and feelings of loneliness. Cindy admitted that she had encouraged Stella every step of the way, telling her that she deserved to be happy, even if it meant finding that happiness with someone else. At first, it was just emotional support, or so Cindy claimed, but things escalated quickly. John began visiting Stella during the day while I was at work, and what had started as emotional support soon turned into a full-blown affair. Cindy was the one who covered for Stella, helping her hide the relationship from me. She even went so far as to arrange girls' nights, so Stella could spend time with John without raising my suspicions. Cindy told me that she thought she was helping her friend find happiness. But as she spoke, it became clear that this wasn't just about friendship. Cindy had always been the type to meddle in other people's lives, to feel important by being in the middle of things. She also said that she didn't think it would go that far. But let's be honest here, what did you expect when you schemed to separate a couple? The simple truth was that she enjoyed playing puppet master, and Stella's situation gave her the perfect opportunity to do just that. She pushed Stella towards John, reassured her when she had doubts, and kept her on track even when Stella started to feel guilty. Cindy admitted that she helped craft the plan. They would stage evidence of my affair and use it as leverage to push me out of the picture. Stella could then be with John openly, and it wouldn't matter if the baby was mine or John's because I would be the villain in the story. Stella and John could live their lives together without any complications. Cindy's role was to keep Stella calm, to help her stick to the story, and to make sure everything went according to plan. As Cindy spoke, I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. This wasn't just a case of a friend helping another friend make bad decisions. This was a calculated, deliberate attempt to destroy my life. Cindy had played a significant role in manipulating Stella, pushing her towards John, and then actively participating in the scheme to frame me. I couldn't believe how deep this betrayal went, and it made me question everything I thought I knew about the people closest to me. When Cindy finished her story, she looked at me with a mix of guilt and fear. She knew she'd crossed a line, and now she was trying to backtrack. She started pleading with me, repeating that she never meant for things to go this far. She claimed she was only trying to help Stella find happiness, and that she didn't realize how much it would hurt me. And then, just like Stella and her mother had done, she resorted to emotional blackmail. Cindy started crying, telling me that all of this stress would be too much for Stella to handle, especially now that she was pregnant. She warned me that if I continued down this path, it could take a toll on the baby. She begged me to consider the child's well-being and to think about the impact all of this was having on Stella's mental health. It was the same manipulative tactic I'd seen from Stella and her mother, and it made me sick. I sat there listening to Cindy's pleas, feeling a mix of disgust and sadness. These people had played with my life like it was some kind of game, and now they were trying to guilt me into backing down. But I couldn't let them win. I couldn't let them manipulate me any longer. The damage they had done was too great, and I wasn't going to be swayed by their crocodile tears. I told Cindy that I wasn't going to drop the paternity test and that I needed to know the truth before I could make any decisions. She tried to argue, but I cut her off. I told her that her involvement in all of this had shattered any trust one had in her, and that I didn't want to hear from her again. I left the cafe feeling a strange sense of relief. I finally had the full story, or at least as much of it as I could stomach, and now I knew exactly who I was dealing with. As I walked away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of finality. Cindy's confession had confirmed what I'd suspected all along, that this wasn't just about an affair. It was about control, manipulation, and the lengths people would go to get what they wanted. I was more determined than ever to see this through to the end, no matter what the paternity test revealed. I'm still waiting for the results, and the tension is unbearable, but at least now I know the truth. I'll update you all as soon as I have more information. Thanks for sticking with me through this nightmare. Your support means more than you know. Update 3. Hi everyone. I'm here with the big reveal that we've all been waiting for. The paternity test results finally came back a day ago, and everything became crystal clear. The moment of truth arrived with a mix of anticipation and dread. Stella, John, and I were all present when the results were disclosed. Surprisingly, John seemed remarkably indifferent about the outcome. It was clear he was staying in the picture regardless of the test results. When the results were announced, it was confirmed. The baby wasn't mine. It was John's. John's reaction was a mix of smug satisfaction and barely contained glee. He practically glowed with pride, a stark contrast to Stella, who sat with her head bowed in a mix of shame and resignation. I could tell she was grappling with the reality that her plan had unraveled completely. Now, with the truth out in the open, she could no longer shift the blame onto me. For a brief moment, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The cloud of uncertainty that had been hanging over my head for weeks had finally lifted. I was no longer trapped in a web of deceit and manipulation. Stella's lies had been exposed, and I was free from the false accusations that had tainted my life. I knew that if the baby had turned out to be mine, I would have still moved forward with a divorce but remained actively involved in the child's life. Despite everything, I couldn't let the child suffer because of their mother's actions. But now, with the results showing that the baby was John's, my path was a bit clearer. I no longer had to weigh the decision of staying or leaving based on the paternity test. The answer had been handed to me on a silver platter. As John shot me smug looks, clearly relishing his victory, I felt a mix of irritation and pity. I wasn't interested in engaging in a confrontation with him or Stella. My focus was on moving forward and reclaiming my life. I wasn't going to let their drama and manipulations control me any longer. I approached Stella quietly, determined to keep my composure. I told her that I would be sending divorce papers soon and that she would need to sign them. I assured her that I would handle all the paperwork and arrangements. Her surprise was evident, but I had already resolved that regardless of the paternity result, Stella and I were done. We had no future together, and I was ready to close that chapter of my life for good. Stella nodded, her expression a mix of resignation and confusion. I could see that she hadn't anticipated my readiness to end things so decisively. But the truth was, the betrayal had run too deep. Even if the baby had been mine, the damage to our relationship was irreparable. We had reached the point where reconciliation was no longer possible. After the brief exchange, I walked away from the situation feeling a sense of finality. I didn't want to discuss anything further. The paternity test results had provided the clarity I needed, and I was ready to move on. It felt like a heavy weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The road ahead might be difficult, but at least now I knew exactly where I stood. I want to take a moment to thank all of you for your support and guidance during this tumultuous period. Your advice and encouragement helped me navigate through these rocky times, and I genuinely appreciate every comment and message of support. It's been a challenging journey, but knowing that I wasn't alone made all the difference. As I begin this new chapter, I'm focused on healing and rebuilding my life. I have got a job offer in another city, and I think this is the best time to take it. I'm optimistic about the future and ready to embrace whatever comes next. Thank you again, Reddit, for being a crucial part of my support system through this ordeal. I couldn't have gotten through it without you. Now on to the next story. Story 6. My wife's passing left me a single dad. My childhood best friend moved to town with her fiancé, but she confessed her feelings to me 4 weeks before her wedding. My 35M friend, Bree, 35F, just told me she loves me 4 weeks before her marriage, and I am not sure what I'm supposed to do here. I want to know if I'm doing the right thing. To give some context, I lost my wife 2 years ago. I have a 5-year-old daughter. I have not dated in the last 2 years because I have major trauma from losing my wife. I still love her a lot and don't think I'm ready to move on. I invested all my time in my daughter, who looks exactly like her mother, and my work to keep my sanity for the last 2 years. I have been friends with Bree since we were in elementary school. We lived in the same neighborhood growing up and were best friends. She is an awesome person, and we were inseparable growing up. The weirdest part was we had completely different personalities. She was very outgoing and always had a lot of friends. I am a big introvert, and Bree, along with a few friends, was all I needed. Bree was a serial dater, and I don't remember any time since middle school when she was single. Bree and I never dated, though. Bree and I also went to the same college. She never had a stable boyfriend but just jumped from one relationship to another. I, on the other hand, did not date seriously until I was in my junior year when I met my wife. She was a freshman and we hit it off instantly. We fell for each other and spent all our time with each other. This strained my relationship with Bree, as I would generally hang out with my wife instead of her. That was the time Bree and I slowly started drifting apart. After college, I moved to a different town for my job, and Bree and I occasionally messaged each other, but nothing beyond that. Bree attended my wedding, and that was the last time I saw her. We kept in touch, but mostly by commenting on each other's pictures or keeping each other updated on significant life events. Bree did reach out to me when my wife passed away, and we talked on a phone call. Last year, Bree and her fiancé moved to my city. I was still grieving, and both have been amazing support for me and my daughter. My daughter loves dancing, and Bree helped me enroll her in dancing and gymnastics classes and sometimes takes her to them. I also became good friends with her fiancé, who is indeed an incredibly good man. My daughter also loves Andy, Bree, and Bree sometimes helps me babysit. Last week, Bree came to my house and asked if we could talk. Her tone sounded serious. She told me that over the last few months, she feels like she has started to develop feelings for me and is not sure anymore if she wants to go ahead with the wedding. She felt I also had started developing feelings for her. I told her that I am not ready for any relationship before I can deal with my mental health, for which I go to a therapist regularly. She tried to convince me that she loved me, we are soulmates, and she felt that we were meant to be together. However, I do not have the same feelings for her. I love her as a friend, but nothing beyond that. We were both emotional, but she said she was glad we talked about this. She left after that. Bree called me that night and told me not to talk about our conversation to anyone. I thought a lot about it and decided that I would not tell her fiancé about our conversation from last week. I feel it's their relationship, and I do not have the right to ruin their moment if Bree decides to go ahead with the wedding. However, I feel guilty that her fiancé does not know anything about this and is going into a marriage where Bree might not be fully ready for it. Can you guys give suggestions on what I should do in this case? Am I wrong for not telling her fiancé about our conversation? Date 1. The last month has been crazy, and my whole world has turned upside down again. For context, I lost my wife 2 years ago, and we have a 5-year-old daughter. Bree and her fiancé, Jason, 33M, moved to our town a year ago, and we have reconnected as friends, and they have done a lot to cheer me up during this year and bring my life back to normal. After Bree told me that she loved me, I told her that I was still not ready to move on as I still miss my wife. She said she understood, and I did not hear from her or Jason for a few days. The guilt was killing me as I was not sure if I should tell Jason about what she told me. Thanks to everyone who commented on the post. It helped me think the situation through. I finally called Bree after a few days and asked her to meet me for lunch. I talked to her and asked her if she was going ahead with her wedding. She broke down and told me she was not sure. I told her that she should at least talk to Jason regarding her feelings and not be dishonest with him. I also assured her that I would not say anything to Jay, but I just wanted her to be happy. She said she understood and left. That night, I put my daughter to sleep and was watching TV. Around 9:30 p.m., I heard a loud knock on my door, and it was Jason. I opened the door, and he was in tears. He started yelling at me and asking me why I had to steal Bree out of all the people. I tried to calm him down, but he just kept on shouting. I was trying to get him to sit down on the bench on our porch. I told him my daughter was sleeping upstairs, but he slowly was getting more and more physical. He punched me in the face and I was able to push him off. I told him to get out of my house, and he sat in his truck and drove away. I immediately called Bree, and she was crying and did not sound well on the phone. She told Jason that she could not marry him because she had feelings for me. I was really scared for her after the physical altercation with Jason and told her to gather some clothes and get out of the house. She did that and came to my place. I just didn't feel she was safe with Jason. I consoled her for almost 2 hours and was able to get her to sleep. The next morning, we had to call her parents to let them know about what had happened. Bree kept a brave face, but I could see how much she was hurting. Her parents asked her to take a few days off and immediately come back home, and she did take a flight in the evening to go home. Over the next 2 weeks, the wedding was called off. Bree and I were talking every day, and she was just very exhausted. She talked to Jason a few times, and he kept on asking her to take more time to think. However, I think Bree just wanted to get out of it and decided to just break it off with Jason. Currently, Bree is staying with us. For the last 2 weeks, she still has a job here and started going back to work last week. I have talked to Bree in detail about what happened. Bree told me that Jason and her were dating on and off for the last 4 years. Jason is not very career-oriented, and Bree is very good at her job. She felt he was a nice and reliable person but was unsure about him from the start. She felt that she was not getting any younger, and hence they decided to get married. When she heard about my wife passing away, she just felt really bad and wanted to be around me to comfort me. When she got her big promotion, which meant she could work in a corporate office, she immediately chose my city and moved here. Jason also moved here and got a new job. She never had any romantic feelings for me back then. As she started hanging out with my daughter and me, she started feeling the bond we shared when we were growing up, except I was the broken one, and she was taking care of me. She said that she realized that she was enjoying her time with us more than with Jason. She realized she made a mistake with Jason and what she wanted was right in front of her. Hence, she slowly started thinking about me in that way and finally told me about it. She knew her relationship with Jason was over the moment she confessed to me. It's a shitty situation, but I am glad that she realized that before getting married versus after. As for Jason, I feel bad for him. He is moving back to our hometown, closer to his family. He is currently in their apartment and will move sometime next month. I know a lot of you would be curious if we were dating. We are not dating. I don't think I can date anyone right now, and neither should Bree. She is my friend, and I am happy that she is staying with us and plans to be here until everything is sorted out. My daughter loves having Andy Bree around too, so that's a bonus. Plus, it's really nice to see her slowly get back to normal. Thanks again for helping me during my last post. Cheers. Additional information from OP. One of the comments from the post really stuck out to me when I was trying to decide if I wanted to tell Jason myself about what Bree told me. Following is the comment. I would not share your conversation. I'd also find a way to pull away from spending any time with her that also does not tear her out of your daughter's life. Not that she is or ever will replace your dear wife and your daughter's mother, because that is possible, but your daughter at a young age had already lost her mom, and I'd hate to see her traumatized by having another woman in her life abruptly leave. My daughter really loves having her around, and I also do not want her to lose Bree. I have thought about the pros and cons, and I feel I'm happy she is staying with us at this point. Update 2. November 8, 2024. I wrote a post 9 months ago about my friend Bree telling me that she loved me a few weeks before she was supposed to get married. For context, I lost my wife 3 years ago, and we have a 6-year-old daughter. Bree and her fiancé, Jason, moved to our town a year ago, and Bree confessed her feelings for me just weeks before her wedding. Things went south quickly, and Bree ended up breaking up with Jason and canceling the wedding. She was staying with us when I last shared an update. Family members didn't know that Jason had assaulted me, and I had to assure everyone that we were safe and okay. I'm feeling particularly happy this week, so I thought I would share an update. Firstly, the reason Bree moved in with us while Jason was still in town was because I had a temporary restraining order, TRO, against him. Bree also filed for one but was denied as he had never directly threatened her safety. She said she felt secure with us because of the TRO, and I agreed. Jason didn't cause any issues after that, though he continued texting Bree, asking her to work on their relationship. Eventually, he moved back to our hometown in February, and we haven't heard from him since. Bree got her own apartment once Jason left town, but she remained very much a part of our daily lives. I enjoyed having her around, and my daughter loves her. In April, Bree brought up the idea of us dating again. I explained that I wasn't over my wife's death and didn't want to be unfair to her because I still love my late wife deeply. Bree told me she knew she could never replace my wife, nor did she want to. She shared a beautiful analogy. She said my heart is like a big pot. It holds a lot of love for my late wife, but it also made room for more love when my daughter was born. Loving her wouldn't erase my love for my wife or daughter. It would simply mean there's more room in my heart than I realized. I took a month to think it over, talking to my mom and mother-in-law, late wife's mom, who both encouraged me to give a relationship with Bree a chance. We officially started dating in May, and it's been surprising how quickly we fell in love. I think the strong foundation of our friendship helped a lot. The last 6 months have been amazing, and I've never seen my daughter so happy. She's a big chatterbox now and insists that Bree comes to all her school events and recitals. Sometimes I feel a little jealous of their bond and even a bit left out of their little chats. The reason I'm writing this update is because I'm planning to propose to Bree this Christmas. It's not a surprise proposal. We went engagement ring shopping last weekend and finalized the ring. We also have wedding plans for next summer. I know it seems quick, but I can't imagine spending the rest of my life with anyone else. Bree deserves to officially be part of our family. My daughter is thrilled, and she and Bree are already shopping for dresses for the engagement photo shoot. Our families couldn't be happier, and we plan to get engaged at a small gathering of family and friends over Christmas weekend in our hometown. I know some people judged me for taking Bree in after she left Jason, and others judged her for leaving him at the altar. Life isn't easy, trust me, and things don't always go as planned, but I'm grateful Bree found the courage to tell me how she felt back then. Thank you all again for your support on my last post. Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1, downvoted. Thanks for the update. Glad things worked out, and wish you both a great future at OP. Thanks. We are excited for the next chapter. Comment 2. Wait, so why didn't she end her relationship before ever sharing with you that she had feelings for you? OP. It was such a crazy time. For weeks before the wedding. I know the right thing should have been the right thing to do. However, I am also glad she did not go through with the wedding when her heart was not in the right place. I feel bad for Jason too, but I think it's better for him it happened instead of learning about it after getting married. I did initially blame myself for all the pain that I caused Bree. I know she would have been married happily to Jason if I did not exist, but through therapy, I've learned to let go of the guilt. It was something I could not control. Comment 3. So you explained to her that you were still grieving your wife, and she gave you some stupid analogy to pressure you into dating her? She sounds desperate and dumb and not a good influence for your child. I feel bad for your daughter. I seriously doubt your wife would approve of this for her. Comment 4. Her analogy was pure manipulation, and you are too stupid or too horny to see it. It's been less than a year. Good luck, dear horny man. You are going to need it. Your wife would be ashamed of the damage you are going to end up doing to your daughter, and all this you let a manipulative woman con her way into your bed and home. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Husband abandoned me during cancer treatment. For years later, he wanted me back, not knowing I was cancer-free and living with the ex he was always jealous of. 5 years ago, I got married to my ex-husband, Jerry, and about a year later, he left me during one of the worst phases of my life. Back then, both of us were 25. We had been dating for about 3 years after college, and then we got married because it seemed like the most obvious next step since we were both happy with each other. We had been married for about 4 months when all of a sudden, I was diagnosed with stage 2 cervical cancer. There had been signs for a couple of months, but we had just chalked it up to general exhaustion and minor illnesses. When things started getting worse, we had to take my condition seriously, and that's when I was diagnosed. After that, I was in and out of the hospital on a regular basis, and for the first couple of months, Jerry was extremely helpful. He would take great care of me, he would handle all the medical reports, and keep in touch with the doctors. I felt like I didn't have to worry about anything at all, and even when I started chemotherapy and I started losing my hair, he shaved his head in solidarity with me. In short, he was literally perfect. But then, he started losing faith when I didn't get better. After almost 6 months had passed and I had undergone several rounds of treatment, I was not showing any sign of progress, and slowly but steadily I was getting worse. He started distancing himself from me, and even when I would try to get him to talk to me, he would just shut me out. I was already going through a lot, and in behaving like that with me, I felt like I was being rejected by him, and I couldn't take that. So, I started picking fights with him just to get his attention, and that seemed to work for a while, but then he moved even further away from me emotionally. Finally, about 2 weeks before our 1-year wedding anniversary, I woke up one day to find him gone. and all he had left for me was a note on our bedside table telling me not to go looking for him because he did not want to be found. I thought he was playing a prank on me or something, so I tried to call him and I sent him several messages, but none of them went through. After a couple of minutes, I realized that he had blocked me, not just my phone number, but he had also blocked me on social media. So, I started panicking and I called my in-laws, and they told me that they knew nothing of this and said that they would get back to me as soon as possible. But they never did. I told my parents about it, and they moved in with me so they could take care of me in his absence, which we assumed would be just for a couple of days. Unfortunately, he just never came back, and after he disappeared, I tried my best to look for him, but I was never able to find him again. He was just gone for good, and it took me a really long time to recover from that emotionally, and I was incredibly depressed for a long time afterward. I tried getting in touch with my in-laws several times after his disappearance from my life, but after that first phone call, they never responded to me. Until a month later, they visited me, but they were acting very cold and weird, and later on, they disclosed that they were only here because they needed to serve me with divorce papers. I was devastated and I realized that they had been in touch with Jerry, but they refused to let on anything else. I was told that he wanted nothing to do with me anymore and that he was really sorry about this, but it had to end this way because he couldn't just waste his life with me anymore. I was really hurt because I could tell that the only reason he left was because I had cancer and he didn't want to take care of me anymore. It's not like I didn't understand what he was going through. It must have been tough on him, but the least he could have done was have a conversation with me. I think after 3 years of being together and 1 year of marriage, that's the least that we owe each other. One honest and transparent conversation about our feelings. But he didn't think that he owed me even that, and that's why he left without a word. It took me a while to come to terms with it emotionally, but after his parents served me with the divorce papers, I signed off on it without any drama. It was already pretty obvious to me that there was nothing left to fight for in this relationship anymore, so it was better to just let it go in a dignified way. I obviously did have a lawyer go over everything with a fine-tooth comb, but in all honesty, his terms were pretty fair. Besides, in 1 year of marriage, we didn't really have any joint assets, and neither of us wanted to drag this thing out, so after getting done with the waiting period, we finalized our divorce without even coming face to face with each other. Everything that I had to communicate with him, my lawyer spoke to his parents and lawyer about it, and that was it. And especially since this was an uncontested divorce, there was no need for us to meet each other either. That was it. After that, I did not hear from my in-laws either, and even though I was completely shattered, I knew that I had to keep going somehow. My condition had started worsening because of the heartbreak that I had gone through, and even though my parents were trying to be strong for me, I could tell that it was hard for them to see me like this. For their sake, I knew that I couldn't just give up on my life and go, even though it probably would have been easy for me back then. Anyway, I decided that I was going to fight for my life, and I don't know if it was a mental thing or if the treatment started working, but somehow I managed to make it through. I'm doing fine right now, and for the past 3 months, I've been cancer-free. It wasn't easy for me at all, and for the past 4 years, all I've done is try to be thankful for my life. Part of that gratitude meant that I was ready to give myself a second chance at love, and that's why I agreed to let my ex-boyfriend move in with me 6 months ago. Some background information about me and my ex. He and I met in college and dated for 2 years, but parted ways shortly after graduation because we wanted different things from life. My ex, let's call him Andy, and I were part of a larger circle, and that's actually also how I knew Jerry since he was part of the same circle. After we graduated from college, we didn't exactly keep in touch, but a couple of months after Andy and I broke up, Jerry reached out to me and we started talking. We became friends, and within a few months, he confessed to me and told me that even when we were in college, he had always had feelings for me but never acted upon it because I was with Andy. Now that we had broken up though, he wanted to ask me out, and after a couple of months I finally said yes. So that's how we ended up together. But even after we got serious about our relationship, Jerry always seemed to be a bit insecure about Andy, and so even though I had been friends with Andy after our breakup, I ended up slowly phasing him out of my life and eventually blocking him altogether because I knew that Jerry didn't feel comfortable with Andy. Our common friends told me that Andy had been very disappointed that I had ghosted him and blocked him after I got with Jerry. But honestly, there was nothing else that I could do. At the time, Jerry was more important to me than anyone else because I was very serious about him. Eventually, I obviously ended up marrying Jerry and forgot about Andy altogether. but then we ended up getting divorced. And even though I never posted about it on social media or went public with it, I did tell a few friends of mine, and I'm guessing that's how Andy found out about our divorce and my diagnosis. So, 5 months after my divorce was finalized, Andy reached out to me via email. He told me that he was really sorry about whatever I was going through, both the divorce and the cancer. He also said that he would really like to be friends again, but he would understand if I didn't feel comfortable with it. He was just very sweet in that email, and he ended by saying that he wanted me to know that he would always be here for me if I ever wanted somebody to talk to. However, back then, I was still reeling from the shock of Jerry leaving me, so I didn't respond to it for 10 months. I did think about that email from time to time, and I even thought about responding, but I couldn't bring myself to actually do it until 10 months later. When I had finally made my peace with the fact that Jerry had left and he was not coming back, and I had told a few of my friends about it, they had insisted that I at least talk to him in a friendly capacity. So, that's exactly what I did, and I really didn't have any intention of getting back together with him or whatever. I just wanted to clear the air between the two of us because he was obviously making an effort to do the same. I responded to him in a completely platonic capacity, and that's how we got to talking. Eventually, we went back to being really good friends, and it was nice to have somebody to talk to on a regular basis, especially since Andy really understands me more than anybody else, to be honest. And I did have my other friends, but with him, I'd always had something special, and talking to him made me happy. My parents also noticed that and encouraged me to keep talking to him, even if we were just friends. For a few months, we would only speak online, and then he started visiting me at home. Slowly but surely, we started getting closer again, and even though I was not ready to get back with him or anything of the sort, he did not give up on me. Last year, he finally told me that he had never really fallen out of love with me, and getting to know that I had started dating Jerry had been a huge heartbreak for him. But knowing that I was happy was enough for him to stay away from both of us. But now that Jerry was gone and we had become friends again, he felt like he had to tell me the truth. That he loved me, and he didn't expect me to get back with him, but he just needed to get it off his chest. I appreciated his honesty, but I was very confused because it had been 3 years since my divorce, and I always felt uneasy thinking about Jerry and our past together because we never really got any closure. So, I was very conflicted about whether I should try to move on or not, even though I really liked Andy, and honestly I was pretty sure that I loved him back now even more than I had before. My parents and friends talked to me and reminded me that it had been 3 whole years since my divorce, and if Jerry hadn't come back by now, it meant that he never cared about me and never would, so I needed to give myself a second chance, especially since I was getting better health-wise. Having fought for my life once, I knew that I needed to value whatever I have at the moment because there's no telling what might happen in the future. They convinced me to stop living in the past and give Andy a chance. So, a couple of weeks after his confession, I decided to get back with him, and then after a few months of being back together, he told me that he wanted to be the one to take care of me. He said he wanted to move in with me, and after giving it some thought, my parents and I decided that since he already spent most of his time with me at my house, it would be better for him to just move in here. So I agreed to let him move in. Since then, we have been staying together. It's been great. I love having him around, and a couple of weeks after he moved in, once he was familiar with my routine, my parents moved out. They still visit me on a regular basis, obviously, but they finally have some time for themselves as well, and I guess they really appreciate it. I'm not ready for a second marriage as of now, but Andy and I have discussed the idea, and maybe in some time we will think about getting married. However, for the past couple of months, I've just really been happy that I'm cancer-free and living with Andy, who really loves me, and I really love him too. Everything was just perfect until earlier this week when Jerry reached out to me. He had finally unblocked me everywhere and had sent me a message on Facebook telling me that he had realized that he had treated me really badly and I didn't deserve that. Of course, it was not in my control that I had been diagnosed with cancer and I was not responding well to the treatment, but he was getting frustrated and did the cowardly thing and decided to just take off without even discussing it with me. He said that he owed me some closure, and honestly, more than anything, he wanted to get back together with me because in the past 4 years, all he had done was miss me terribly. He said that he was ready to give our marriage a second chance, and if things go back to how they were, even if that meant that he was going to have to take care of me for the rest of his life, he said that he was ready to do it all. And I decided to ask him to visit me, but not for the reasons that he believed. And here is where I might have been in the wrong because my intentions were very obvious. I was trying to hurt him. I hadn't posted about my diagnosis or my recovery anywhere, only my family and close friends knew that I was fine right now, so he had obviously still assumed that I was struggling with cancer, and after taking some time off for 4 years, he decided to finally come back to me. It was so insulting that he had believed that I was going to take him back after how he had treated me and pretended like I wasn't even a part of his life for the past 4 years. I was furious when I had read that message because it was clear that he actually genuinely believed that I was just going to take him back, no questions asked. He hadn't even bothered to explain to me what he had been doing for the past 4 years. That's how confident he seemed. I was very upset about it, so I decided that I was going to teach him a lesson. So, I invited him home just so that I could show him how my new life was. He had no idea that I was staying with Andy because I've never been one to go public with my relationships. I only even posted about Jerry online when I got married, so right now very few people know about my relationship with Andy, and obviously none of these people have been in touch with Jerry. That's why a couple of days ago, when Jerry showed up at my house with flowers and chocolates, the first thing that I did after opening the door to him was call Andy to the door and tell Jerry that while I really appreciated his apology, the flowers, and the chocolates, I had moved on with my life and I did not want him back. He immediately started losing it because obviously, Andy was the one person he was extremely insecure about and had always been. He started freaking out at me, telling me that I had betrayed him and stuff and even accused me of cheating on him. I don't understand how it counts as cheating if I hadn't even been with him at the time that I started dating Andy again. But anyway, I didn't care about his reaction because all I had wanted to do was give him a shock, and I had succeeded in doing that. So, while he was having a mental breakdown on my porch, I decided to shut the door, and Andy and I went back to watching TV. For the record, I hadn't told Andy about it, but he didn't really have a problem with what I had done. However, my parents and my friends thought that there was no reason for me to do this. I could have just let it go because this was me just inviting toxicity into my life again, and if I'm being honest, I don't exactly think that they were wrong because after he left that day, my in-laws haven't stopped trying to contact me because they think that I have been completely heartless. They said that if I had moved on already, then I shouldn't have agreed to invite their son over to my house and give him false hopes because he had actually been feeling sorry about everything that he had done and wanted to fix things with me, which is why he had taken the effort to reach out to me and come to visit me. They are accusing me of trying to ruin his mental health on purpose, and they even have the audacity to suspect me of having had an affair with Andy all along, even though they know for a fact that for the past 4 years, I had nothing on my mind apart from getting better, and before we got married, I had blocked Andy out of my life altogether just for Jerry. So, I don't understand how they have the audacity to accuse me of having had an affair with him. Anyway, they are trying to make me out to be the villain and are acting as if their son was completely innocent in this whole situation. And like I said, my parents and friends are already against this. They have told me that what I did was very unnecessary. They can understand that I felt the need to get back at him, but at the end of the day, it doesn't change the fact that it was kind of petty. They're not exactly making a big deal out of it, but they have spoken their mind, and I feel kind of guilty about what I did. I could have avoided all the drama if I had just not responded to him at all, and I knew that I had been petty, but now I feel bad. However, I still don't think that I need to apologize to him or whatever because I don't think that it's such a big deal. I definitely do not think that it's as big a deal as his parents are making it out to be, especially considering the fact that he had literally left me while I was fighting for my life and had gone MIA for the next 4 years, not even showing up for our divorce. His parents also hadn't tried to be apologetic for it, so I don't understand why I'm expected to be forgiving and just let everything go, especially when my in-laws know how their son had treated me back then. Anyway, AITA for inviting my ex-husband home just so that I can show off my new life? Date 1. Hi. So thank you so much for all the comments on my post. It was all really helpful. First things first, I did speak to my parents and my friends about why I did what I did. I don't deny the fact that I was petty, and I definitely don't deny the fact that it was completely unnecessary. I could have totally avoided all the drama by just not responding to him, but I felt like I needed to get some closure. I didn't think things through. I made the decision in the heat of the moment, so it was probably not the best way to deal with it, but I don't have any regrets about it either. They didn't have much to say, we just decided not to talk about it because it really wasn't worth it, and it wasn't exactly as bad as you guys think. I guess I might not have been able to communicate properly in the post or something, But just to be clear, my parents and my friends were not insisting that I apologize to my ex or whatever. They had just told me that they didn't exactly agree with what I had done, and they had left it at that. They hadn't tried to guilt-trip me like my in-laws were doing, and now that we have spoken about it, we have decided that we are just going to agree to disagree. It's really not a big deal for them, and nothing in our relationship has changed, so we are fine. The only problem that I'm dealing with right now are my in-laws because they are very upset with what I did. They think that I have emotionally tortured their son by inviting him over, and they think that I owe him a huge apology. I'm not even joking. They have sent me several emails telling me that I need to apologize to him in person and that I need to clarify that I didn't have anything to do with Andy while we were together because apparently he is completely broken down. I don't understand why my in-laws expect so much of me, especially since we haven't had much of a relationship ever since the divorce. They knew that what their son was talking to me was incredibly wrong, and yet they had been on his side and had helped him hide from me during the divorce. I'm not completely blaming them, but they were a huge part of the reason why I was never able to get any sort of emotional closure from Jerry while we were separating. So how come it was back then? But now, since it's Jerry's mental health at risk, all of a sudden, I need to talk to him and give him an explanation for everything? He didn't think that he owed it to me back then. Neither did his parents, so I'm just playing by the same rulebook now. Update 2. So, it's been 3 days since my last update, and I've been having no problems. But of course that probably did not sit well with Jerry and his parents. Andy and I work from home, but I guess they didn't know that. They probably assumed that Andy wouldn't be at home if they showed up in the morning. Jerry and his parents visited me in the morning today, and when I opened the door, they started demanding that I speak to Jerry and give him an explanation for everything that is going on because he's been very confused and they can't allow their son to go through this. I literally just rolled my eyes at them and I told them that I was not entertaining any of this BS. I did not owe them anything because Jerry didn't bother to give me an explanation when he left, and now he could think whatever he wanted. I was not going to give him the satisfaction of getting an explanation or a reaction out of me. The only reason I had even opened the door was so that I could say this to their faces, and then I told them that if they did not clear out, I would call the cops. Then Jerry started screaming at me, telling me that I was a horrible human being for what I had done. He called me petty and selfish, and then he started cursing at me. When he started screaming, Andy had heard that and he came to my side. He looked furious, and I could tell that it was taking him all he had to keep himself from having a go at Jerry, and I really didn't want to do that. So, I took my phone out and I told Jerry and his parents that they had to leave or I really would call the cops. After bickering with me for a couple of seconds, they finally left because I had started dialing, even though they did not let go of the opportunity to curse at me some more. That did not affect me though, even though it really made Andy mad and he cursed right back at them. But finally, they left. Luckily, Andy told me that he had started recording everything on his phone. So even though there is hardly any video of any of this happening, he has a full audio recording of Jerry yelling at me, and he didn't stop recording until they had left. Now that we have this, we know for a fact that the next time they show up, we will not only be pressing charges against them, but we will also be contacting our lawyers to file a restraining order against Jerry and his family. But I really hope that we don't have to go through all of that and that they leave me alone after this because I think I've said whatever I had to. Update 3. Hey! So it's been a couple of days since Jerry and his parents showed up at my house. After that, they did not try to contact me anymore, and I was really relieved. I did speak to a couple of my friends about what had happened, and they told me that what I had done was kind of petty and unnecessary. The way they were reacting right now was unhinged, and they thought it would be wise for me to speak to a lawyer just in case. But I don't think I'm going to need to do that because last night I received an email from Jerry, and he told me that he's moving to Europe with his parents and he's never going to bother me again. Apparently, after he left me, he moved to California for his new job. He had applied to it while he was still with me, but he couldn't bring himself to talk to me about it because he knew that it was impossible for me to relocate at a time like that, and neither did he want me to even consider it. But he would feel like a horrible human being for leaving me while I was struggling to live. So, he admitted to being a coward and said that he left so that he could avoid any sort of confrontation. And even though he had had a couple of flings in the past 4 years, he could never get serious with anybody because he always regretted whatever had gone wrong with me. Recently, he had applied for a position in Europe, and he had been back here for a couple of months so he could convince his parents to move with him and have a fresh start. That's why he had reached out to me as well, because now that he was back in town, he had at least wanted to apologize to me and give our relationship another shot. But after seeing me with Andy the other day, he realized that he had no right to intrude in our lives, especially not after everything that he had put me through, and he definitely did not have the right to question me either, nor his parents. So now, he was doing the decent thing and leaving me alone. He said that he did not expect to be forgiven because all of this was coming too late and it was just too little. But he wanted to apologize for everything that he had done because he had been a coward, and even he had no right to be throwing tantrums and sending his parents after me the way he did. He knew that Andy loved me and I was happy with him, so he's going to stay away from me now. And I have to say, I'm really glad that he came to this conclusion. I did not reply to that email, but I did make Andy read it and my friends and parents read it as well. They think that this is good enough to put an end to whatever had been going on, and I agree. So now we can all finally collectively move on from this. This is good because in a couple of months, I think I would like to get married to Andy and start a new chapter of my life with him. I guess I finally got the closure that I needed, and I'm finally ready to get married again, to start a family, and just live my life to the fullest once more. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My sister got pregnant with my fiancé a week before our wedding. 2 years later, she wants me to adopt their daughter because her husband passed away and she's fighting cancer. For context, I had been with my ex-fiancé, Rob, for 3 years when we got engaged, and when he decided to start cheating on me with my sister. My sister, Nora, is 2 years younger than me and was always a jealous brat. Whatever I wanted, she always wanted the exact same thing, and most of the time she got her way. Our parents would totally coddle her the entire time she was growing up, and I guess that's why she grew up to be a spoiled, entitled, and insecure brat. It didn't bother me that she always got her way. It also got on my nerves that she was a huge copycat, and then she would pretend like I was the one copying her. Whenever we even thought about these things, my parents would intervene and ask me to let it go since these were petty things and I needed to be the bigger person. But honestly, I was sick of being the bigger person all the time just because I was older. Eventually, my relationship with my sister became really bitter, and I was glad to leave for college because that meant that I wouldn't have to stay in the same house as them anymore. College is where I met Rob and we became friends. He was the one who asked me out after almost 2 years of crushing on each other but never making a move because we were too scared to ruin our friendship. But I guess around the time we graduated, he worked up the nerve to finally do it, and I said yes to going out with him, which was probably the biggest mistake of my life because after dating for 3 years, he decided to ask me to marry him, and once again I said yes. We had already met each other's families by then, but because I was not very close to my family, he had only met my folks a handful of times. However, after we got engaged, there were a lot of instances where he met my family more, and that included Nora. I never really suspected anything because when the two of us were together, Rob never gave me a reason to doubt him. He seemed pretty head over heels in love with me, and I loved him, so for me to even think that he would end up cheating on me with Nora, it seemed too unlikely to happen. Now looking back on it, I guess he was just a really good actor and did a fantastic job of convincing me that nothing was going on when in fact, he and Nora had started flirting behind my back a couple of weeks after we got engaged. Of course, Nora had been the one to initiate it. I know that for a fact because she had confessed to it, and Rob had held back for about a month or so before he finally started responding to her advances. Unfortunately, by the time I even found out about any of this, there was just 1 week left to go for my wedding. The only reason they had even decided to tell me that they had started having an affair was because Nora had managed to get herself knocked up by Rob, and by the time they told me about it, she was already 9 weeks along. Pretty much everybody knew about it before I did, which is why they had called for a family meeting a week before my wedding. I had actually expected it to be a surprise for me or something, but I had left this so-called meeting in tears that day, and 2 years have passed since then, but it's still the worst day of my life. My parents were there, Rob's parents were there, and of course Rob and Nora were also there. They sat me down, and the two of them told me that a couple of weeks after my engagement, Nora had reached out to Rob and started flirting with him, and he hadn't responded at first, but slowly he started warming up to her because she was funny and kind of cute. They figured that it was just a bit of harmless flirting, and at first they were just joking around, so it seemed like banter, but before they even knew it, they had started falling for each other. Nora told me that she had only started flirting with him because she felt like messing with me, but apparently, according to her claims, She did not have any actual intention of ruining our relationship or falling in love with my fiancé. And as for Rob, his excuse was that he had just started thinking about life after marriage, and this was his way of relieving the stress that he was feeling about the upcoming wedding and stuff. Both of them had pretty lame excuses, and I definitely didn't believe what Nora was saying about her not having any intentions of ruining anything for me and that the affair had just happened out of the blue. The bottom line was that my fiancé had cheated on me with my sister, and now Nora was pregnant with my fiancé's baby. Not just that, they were apparently also in love with each other and wanted to marry each other, which is why they had told their parents and the family meeting had been called so that I could be informed. Everything had already been decided. They had just wanted to let me know about it, and it's not like I could do anything about the situation at that point, so I just had to deal with it. The families had been told the truth about a week before me, 2 weeks after Nora and Rob found out that she was pregnant, and all of them had discussed the way to go about this in the future and had come to the conclusion that I just had to deal with it because obviously Rob couldn't marry me anymore. They started to apologize to me, but that was when I decided that I had had enough, and until then, I had just been sitting quietly because I was in disbelief of what I was hearing. But when I realized that they were all telling me the truth and this was actually happening, I lost it and I started screaming at everyone. I was really frustrated, hurt, and confused, and it all just came out at once. Most of all, I was upset with Rob and Nora because they were the main culprits here. I screamed at Rob for almost 5 whole minutes and cursed him out, and he just heard me out quietly. And then I finally addressed Nora and told her that I didn't buy any of the baloney that she had been feeding to everyone else, that she did not have any intention of ruining my relationship with my fiancé because knowing the kind of person that she was, that's probably what she had wanted all along, and now that she was pregnant with my fiancé's baby, she was probably very proud of herself. She started crying and apologizing, telling me that she really didn't have any intention of going so far and that I had every right to be mad, but she just wanted me to know that she didn't intend to do something like this. But I just couldn't take it anymore. I ended up slapping her right across her face, and then she stayed silent after that. Nobody had anything to say anymore, and I left. That was the last time that I saw Rob, Nora, or anybody else from my family in person. I cut all of them out of my life completely, and 2 weeks later, I heard from a couple of friends that Rob and Nora got married in a private ceremony with just their families. By then, I had made a lot of changes to my life so that I wouldn't have to run into Rob ever again. I had packed all my stuff and moved in with a friend, and I even applied for a transfer to a different branch of my company so I could get away from this place for a while. It was difficult for me to completely extract myself from the situation, but within a month, I was in a different city, and at least physically, I was far away from everybody. But mentally, I was still stuck in the same place and I started developing serious drinking problems. I went through depression, and since I was in a new city with hardly any friends and no family, there was nobody to help me out, and I didn't feel like reaching out to anyone either. Eventually, I stopped showing up at work too, and within a couple of weeks they had fired me. But I still stayed there for about 2 or 3 months more. I stayed away from my hometown in that new city for a while after I was laid off just so that I could escape from everything until I finally ran out of money. I was so broke that I could hardly even afford flight tickets back home, but somehow I sold some stuff of mine and managed to scrape by to return here. By then, I had finally started to realize just how royally I had messed everything up for myself, and I didn't even have enough money to drink, which meant that I had to suffer withdrawal symptoms along with depression. In my head, I was over, but I guess there was just something in me that refused to give up that easily. So I flew back home and showed up at my best friend's house, Kylie. My best friend had been my platonic soulmate since I was in kindergarten, and when I showed up at her house, I hadn't even been speaking to her because I wanted to forget everyone and everything. But when I asked her to help me out and broke down at her doorstep, she took me in. No questions asked. For that, I'll always be grateful because when I couldn't turn to my own family, she was the one who looked after me. It was evident from my physical appearance that I was going through some serious problems, and she took care of me, helped me apply to new jobs, and let me live with her rent-free for almost 3 months until I finally felt healthier. She put me in touch with AA support groups and was even considering rehab, but I didn't want that. I was lucky enough to get better without rehab, and I even managed to land a decent job at a different company. I still stayed with her even after I got a job again, and she let me live with her for almost 8 months before I finally felt ready to live on my own again. And by then, I could tell that her boyfriend wanted to move in with her, and so did she, but they had been holding off on that for my sake. I didn't want her to make any more sacrifices for me, so I decided to move out after 8 months of staying with her, and even though I was still struggling to cope with everything mentally, I did feel much better, and soon enough I was back on my feet. Almost 2 years have passed since my wedding got called off, and I have had no contact with anybody from my family since then. After I left, nobody even bothered to reach out to me, not even to apologize one last time. I wasn't close with my extended family anyway, and once I stopped speaking to my parents, I cut the rest of my family out of my life as well. And once our friends had found out what Rob had done, they had cut him off as well, so I had absolutely no clue what had been going on with him for the past 2 years. But 3 weeks ago, I heard from a couple of friends that Rob had unfortunately been in an accident and had succumbed to his injuries after fighting for his life for 4 days in the hospital. It had come as a huge shock to me, and I had even attended his funeral but had left before anybody could spot me because in spite of everything that had happened, he and I had been close at one point in time, and I just couldn't believe that he was gone. If I'm being honest, I still haven't come to terms with it fully. It's not like I'm still in love with him or that I haven't been able to move on, but I don't know how to explain it. It's just a huge shock because nobody could ever see this coming, and it's difficult to accept somebody's passing even when you hate that person. And as if that shock wasn't bad enough, my mother showed up at my house with Nora and Rob's daughter a couple of days ago and told me that she needed to talk to me on an urgent basis. I wouldn't have invited her in, but because she had the kid with her, I asked her inside. She told me that she had taken great pains to find out where I live because none of my friends had been ready to give out my address, and told me that she was really thankful that I had agreed to speak to her. She told me that she knew I had been there at Rob's funeral and that she and the rest of the family were still really sorry about whatever went wrong, but it was beyond their control. And then she told me that Rob and Nora did get married, but they are still paying for everything that they did wrong with me. My mother then started breaking down and told me that Rob had of course had to pay with his life, and that had been his punishment, but what Nora was going through was even worse because she has not only lost the love of her life, but now she's not even sure if her daughter will ever be able to grow up experiencing the love of her parents. And that's how I found out that Nora had been diagnosed with glioblastoma, and she has maybe 3 or 4 years to live at best and 1 year at worst. She had been diagnosed about 4 months back, and even with treatment, it's very unlikely that she's going to make it because it's an aggressive form of cancer, and people hardly ever make it. The doctors were hopeful because she's still young and has led a healthy lifestyle so far, but even then, it's just going to extend her lifespan for a couple of more years, and chances of making it for more than maybe 5 years are bleak. In the past few months, Nora had still been a little hopeful because at least Rob was around and healthy, and she knew that her daughter would be taken care of because maybe in the future Rob could remarry and her daughter would have both a mother and a father, or at least just a father. But now she's absolutely shattered because her daughter has already lost her father to an unexpected accident, and in a couple of years, she's going to be orphaned when Nora leaves her side as well. Of course, my niece is definitely going to have her grandparents, but it's not the same thing, and it's not like my parents or Rob's parents are getting any younger. All of them are already either in their late 40s or in their early 50s, and that's obviously not the ideal age to be raising a child all over again. Besides, Nora believes that even if her daughter's grandparents are up to the task, it's important for her to know that her daughter will have at least one parental figure around even after her demise. That's why my mother had come to me because after Nora found out that I had been there at Rob's funeral, she got it into her head that I was the only person whom she could trust with the responsibility of raising her daughter after she was gone. What was surprising was that even my parents and Rob's parents believed the same, and that's why my mother had come to speak to me along with my niece, so I could at least meet her once before making up my mind. She told me that Nora would have come to meet with me herself, but she was already not really well, and she wasn't sure if I would even want to see her, so my mother had been chosen to speak to me on behalf of the family because she was the only person I had a somewhat normal relationship with back when I was on good terms with them. After she told me the real reason why she had come to speak to me, I had already been thrown for a curveball because I really hadn't seen that coming. And then she started insisting that I agree to raise my niece as my own daughter after Nora passes away, and told me that they would want me to spend more time with my niece before that as well so we could get familiar with each other and make the phasing process a bit easier. She told me that everybody in the family agreed that this would be the best way to go about the situation, and at least Nora would have the peace of knowing that her daughter would not miss out on the love of her parents after she was gone. And when I didn't say anything because I was in shock, my mom started crying and told me to show them some mercy in spite of everything that they had done because ultimately Nora was turning out to be quite unfortunate, and after all, my niece was still my blood. At that point, I started freaking out a little bit because it was all going too fast, and I told my mother that I couldn't just make up my mind within an hour, especially about a commitment as big as this. I told her that I needed to think about a lot of things, and it wasn't just about what had already happened in the past. Even keeping that aside, this was a huge deal and I couldn't just agree. At first, she told me that Nora would be heartbroken if I refused, and she was already pretty depressed, and she would not be able to take it well if my mother went home and told her that I had declined. My mom started pleading with me, and I told her that I just needed some time to think about it. I wasn't accepting, and neither was I declining. I just needed some time to think things over, and I really didn't want to get upset in front of my niece because she was pretty young. So I requested my mother to leave so I could have some peace and quiet. Eventually, my mother did leave, but only after making me swear that I would contact her within a week and let her know about my decision. It has already been a couple of days since then, and I still have no idea what to do. I feel terrible about a lot of things, not just whatever had happened in the past. Of course, that still hurts when I think about it, and it hurts even more when I think about what's going on with all of us right now. I'm doing well enough in my life at the moment, but thinking about Nora and everything that she has lost, I honestly think that this punishment that she has received is far greater than everything that she did wrong. I'm just totally lost right now. I don't know what to do, and it's making me feel horrible about myself because even if I forgive Nora, I know that I'm still not ready to raise a child. So, am I the asshole for not wanting to adopt my sister's child after she passes away? Edit. My niece's grandparents are more than ready to take on the responsibility of raising her after Nora passes away, but even they agree that they are not exactly the ideal candidates. All the financial aspects of raising a child are going to be taken care of by Nora and everyone else, but that's not even what I'm worried about because even though I can afford to be a mother right now, speaking from a strictly financial aspect, it's the emotional aspect that worries me. Ultimately, it's Nora's decision, and she, as well as everyone else, believes that I should be the one to raise my niece after Nora passes away because I'll be able to form a maternal bond with her daughter, but the grandparents will always be just that, grandparents. I can understand where it's coming from, but I don't feel ready, and that's the problem here. Update 1. So today was the day that my mom had made me promise to get in touch with her because 1 week has passed since she visited me. She had stuck to her promise and not tried to contact me even once during this past week, because I had told her that I needed some time to think and come to my decision, and I wouldn't be able to do that if she constantly kept badgering me. This week has been really difficult because the decision itself had been made. I just didn't know how to come to terms with it myself or how to convey it to the rest of the family, but I had to do it for my sake and for theirs. So I just called my mother up today, invited her home, and I finally told her that I wouldn't be able to do it. I told her that I have been through a lot in my life, and right now I was just not in the kind of state of mind where I could even entertain the thought of becoming a mother, much less the mother of Rob and Nora's child. There were already a lot of emotional layers to my decision, and it was all just really complicated, so I tried to keep it as short as possible, and I just told her that I was not ready to be a mother. It was a huge commitment, and I had thought about it really long and hard, and I was just not ready. My mom's reaction was nothing short of hysterical, and she instantly started telling me that it's not like I had to commit to it right now. I still had a couple of years before Nora left, and hopefully that would be enough for me to make up my mind. But I told her that even then, I wouldn't feel comfortable trying to take her place or whatever, and it would just be really painful for me. My mom started crying, and it was really difficult for me to even talk to her because she just kept repeating that this was going to break Nora's heart, and I felt terrible about it as well. But there was nothing that I could do. Eventually, she managed to gather herself and told me that she understood my decision and respected it, and then she left. I feel relieved that I was able to tell her what I wanted and stick to it, but I also feel equally terrible about the reaction, and I know this is going to be difficult for Nora, but well, I had to do what I had to do. Update 2. So it has been 3 days since I last met with my mom, and today in the morning she called me up and told me that Nora really wanted to speak to me in person. I was not comfortable with that idea because we haven't spoken to each other or even seen each other for 2 years, and now that she's sick, I know that this is really awkward and difficult for both of us. But my mom told me that she had been insisting on it for the past 2 days, and she knew that I wasn't comfortable with that idea, so she had to try to talk Nora out of it, but she was set on that one thing. After thinking about it for a couple of minutes, I agreed because she was going through enough as it is. I guess at least I could see her once. We never got along in the past, but honestly, at this stage, I just feel bad for her because I don't have it in me to hate somebody who's lost everything. So after work, I went over to my parents' house after almost 2 years and saw my dad first. So I had a bit of an emotional reunion with him and we hugged it out. He apologized to me as well, and then I finally saw Nora. She had lost a lot of weight and was half of what she used to be as a person. I could see that she was sick. It showed on her face, and on top of that, I'm sure that the loss of her husband has taken a toll on her as well. Basically, she was not doing well and I could see it. We had an awkward side hug, and then without wasting any time, she just told me that she was really sorry about what she had done. But she had meant every bit of what she had said that day, that she really did not have any intention of ruining my relationship. As a matter of fact, she hadn't even expected Rob to respond to her advances at any point because he seemed to be in love with me. And that's why she had been hitting on him just to get on my nerves without doing any real damage. But that backfired when he started responding, and she kind of did like him, so they ended up taking it too far without thinking about me. And after that, nobody had the courage to reach out to me after what they had done. She told me that she regretted everything and that she would take it all back in an instant if she could. But she couldn't, so she was just trying to apologize to me and make up for everything that she had put me through. And she also told me that when Rob had been alive, even he had been full of regret about this, and both of them were just really sorry. I didn't want to relive the past, so I just told her that it was fine and I didn't want to think about it anymore because I had moved on from it. After that, she told me that she knew that I had declined to raise her daughter as my own after she passed away, and she could understand my reasons for it, but she also wanted me to know that even if I changed my mind at any point, she would still love for me to take my niece in. I didn't know what to say, so I just smiled, and then we chatted about our lives. I spent almost an hour and a half with her before I started feeling tired because I had come straight from work to see her, and she told me to go home, but she also requested me to stay in touch because she would really love to have an opportunity to make things right with me before it was too late. And I could see that she had tears in her eyes. I guess she had been holding it back the entire time that I was there. But towards the end, she couldn't help herself, and neither could I. Neither of us allowed ourselves to cry in front of each other, though. I waited until I got home, and then I cried myself out, not just about today but about everything that has happened so far, and it feels like a huge burden has been lifted off of my chest. I don't know what the future is going to be like, but I just hope that I can put the past behind me. Update 3. Hi guys, so Nora passed away last night, and the reason that I decided to post about it here is because exactly 3 years ago on this very day, I had visited her for the first time after our huge fallout. It's obviously very tragic, but the timing is nothing short of poetic, and I just had to tell people about it without sounding insensitive. I did keep in touch with Nora in the past 3 years, and we have spent some time together in the past couple of weeks when her condition had started deteriorating. The entire family was by her side almost constantly, and that included me. My feelings about her are complicated at best, and I don't know how to explain it, so I won't even try. But I do have a really close relationship with my niece, and even though I'm still not ready to adopt her or take the place of her mother, she and I have a special bond, and I'm going to make sure that she knows that no matter what, she's always going to find a parent, friend, and of course, an aunt in me. And to be honest, even if I had been ready to adopt her, I wouldn't have had the heart to take her away from her grandparents right now because both my parents and Rob's parents need this. I truly hope that they are both in a better place now, and I forgive them for everything. It's not easy, but I don't want to hold anything in my heart against them. Not anymore. So I'm letting go. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Stepbro was stealing my stuff to give to his GF and my mom took his side. So I ran away to my dad's house and found out she's been using his child support money to buy luxury items. Hey, so I, 16F, recently moved out of my mom's house and have been staying with my dad. She's begging me to come back home and give her a second chance, but I really don't feel like doing that. The reason for that is her family. My stepdad, Rick, and stepbrother, Liam, 16M. My parents got divorced 7 years ago, and she started dating Rick about 3 years back. After being together for 1 year, Rick and Liam moved in with us, and my mom got married to Rick about 8 months ago. Living with these people has been a challenge because Rick and Liam don't really care about me, and they try to avoid me as much as they can, and the same goes for me. But ever since they moved in, my mother has also become quite distant and spends most of her time with them and doesn't seem to care about me. It used to bother me a lot because even though she and my father have shared custody of me, I spend most of my time staying with her. In the initial years after their divorce, I used to divide my time equally between the two of them and go back and forth. But then, 4 years ago, my dad struck gold at his company and received a huge promotion. It meant more responsibilities and much higher pay than what he used to receive for basically the same work, but it also meant having to move away from his work. He also became a lot busier because of his responsibilities, and I did not feel bad about that. But I do have to admit that I did miss seeing him more frequently because after that happened, we had to adjust the custody arrangement accordingly as well. I had school and stuff, and I couldn't afford to see him as frequently as I used to because it would require a lot more travel. So I started staying with my mother throughout the week, and for a couple of weekends in the month, my dad would arrange for me to come to see him or visit me himself. It was tedious and exhausting for both of us, but we had managed to stick to it so far. I was planning on moving in with him after I graduated high school because, honestly, after my mom got remarried, I had no interest in living with her anymore since it felt like she didn't care for me and her priorities had changed. I had tried to talk about it to her a couple of times, but every time she had just reassured me that I was still a priority for her, and that her relationship with Rick and Liam was not going to change anything between us, since I was her flesh and blood after all. But then what happened recently really showed me that all the reassurances that she had been feeding me were just words, and she didn't actually mean any of that. Recently, I found out that Liam had been stealing my very expensive makeup and a couple of my shoes so that he could give them to his girlfriend as presents. He and I used to go to the same middle school together, and now we are in the same high school together as well. That's actually how my mom met his dad, since they're both single parents and happened to run into each other at some school event. I know for a fact that Liam has been dating one of the girls from our year since middle school, and because we are in the same year, I follow her on social media as well. A couple of weeks ago, I had this pair of really expensive sneakers go missing, and I had no idea where they were until I saw his girlfriend wearing it in one of her posts. This is not even the first time that something of mine has gone missing because, as I had mentioned earlier, even a couple of my makeup items and other pairs of shoes were also nowhere to be found. They were expensive as well because they were my dad's gifts to me, and I really cherished them and kept them carefully. So I knew that somebody in the house was doing this. I had even complained to my mother about it, and she had fired the housekeeper over this, but even after that, things continued to go missing, and eventually she just told me that it must have been me who had misplaced these things. But when I saw that girl wearing those sneakers in her post, I decided to ask her if she had been receiving more gifts than usual from Liam. This girl and I are not friends. We are not even close, and we don't really speak to each other. But this seemed like an emergency, so I decided to reach out to her without caring about how weird it would seem. Surprisingly, she did reply to me and told me that she had ended up receiving a lot more gifts from Liam than usual in the past couple of weeks. They were mostly just makeup items and shoes, and they were really expensive ones too, so she was really happy. I don't know why that girl hadn't thought to question how exactly he was able to afford any of this. But when I found out from her that he had indeed been stealing my stuff and giving it to his girlfriend, I lost it, and I ended up telling her that all these things were originally mine, and he had basically been stealing my stuff so he could impress her with these gifts. She did see that message, but she did not reply after that, and I don't really care if she replies or not because that's literally the last thing on my mind. Because after that conversation with her, I decided to take it up with Liam and showed him the screenshots of our chats and asked him, why would he start stealing my things, especially personal items like makeup? At first, he tried to deny everything and told me that he had been saving up his pocket money to buy her these things. But I was not a fool. Both of us get the same amount of pocket money from our respective parents, and it's not enough to even cover half of the price of the shoes. However, when I brought it up with our parents that day, they had a very weird reaction that I did not understand. Instead of reprimanding him, his dad actually started to come out in support of him. His father actually defended him and turned the entire thing on me by saying that it was my fault for constantly showing off how expensive the presents that my dad got for me were. It was natural for Liam to feel weird about it, and since he couldn't exactly use the makeup and shoes for himself, he decided to try and impress his girlfriend with it. It might have been an immature decision on his part, but Rick claimed that he could totally understand where it was coming from. It was just a really stupid defense because, honestly, I don't show off the presents that my dad gets for me because I didn't think that they would even care. And the way Rick tried to defend Liam, I honestly thought that was a projection of what he felt because I guess he was insecure that he couldn't afford the same kind of expensive gifts for his son and felt bad that my father, his wife's ex-husband, was in a position where he could afford to buy me such expensive things on a regular basis, and I guess that's why he tried to turn the entire thing on me. But I was not going to let him make me feel like I was the one at fault and this was totally normal because I knew for a fact that it wasn't. My mom was in the room as well throughout, but she refused to comment on anything, and it was just me fighting against Rick and Liam on my own. I even turned to her and asked her to help me out here because it felt like Rick was just refusing to see my point on purpose because that would require him to acknowledge the fact that his son had messed up. But my mom refused to weigh in, and instead, she just told me that she could understand that I was having problems with Liam, but there was no need for me to come and act like a tattletale to get him into trouble. She then told me that this was between me and my brother and that I needed to deal with it without getting them involved. That put an end to the entire argument and Liam went to his room and our parents went to theirs while I kept freaking out at all of them. But there was nobody there to even hear me out because that's how little they cared. It was incredibly frustrating because even though Liam had admitted to the fact that he had been taking my things, there was literally no punishment for him. In fact, Rick had come to his rescue, and my mother had refused to even say a word against that. I felt so hopeless and let down after that incident. I decided that I was going to stay with my father, even if it required me to drop out of high school. I packed my things that night to the best of my abilities and sneaked out of the house really late at night when I knew that everyone would be sleeping. Lucky for me, I had a friend whose older sister had a car, and the two of them drove me to my dad's house. We arrived about 4 hours after we had left at around 6 o'clock in the morning, and my dad was really surprised to see us there so early, but he invited us all in, and then I explained everything that had happened which had led me to come stay with him so abruptly. He already knew for a fact that I had been feeling neglected while staying with my mom, but had been motivating me to just fight it out for a couple of years more because after that I would have graduated high school and I wouldn't have to worry about where I stayed. But after hearing me out, he told me that he would arrange something for me because it was clear that I just couldn't live with them anymore. And honestly, I felt the same way. I just couldn't live with these people, so I was glad to have him on my side. My friend and her sister drove back home the next day, and my friend has told everybody in school that I have mono, which is why I wouldn't be attending school for the next couple of weeks until I recover. And it'll be easy enough to get a medical certificate to have my absence excused, so I'm not worried about that. What I'm actually worried about is my mother because the day after I left home, when she discovered that I was not there, she called me up and started texting me about where I was, and she hasn't stopped apologizing to me since then. I really hate the fact that I'm having to break her heart because it's been 1 week since I left home, and she just keeps begging me to come back home, but I really don't feel like I want to. It's become a moral dilemma for me because I also just found out about a couple of more things from my father that I did not know earlier, and that has made things significantly more complicated for me. For instance, my dad was really upset that my mom had been treating me like this and had been talking about a lot of things, and that's how I found out that he had been paying a massive amount of child support ever since he received his promotion and had to move away. After he received his promotion, my mother demanded 20% of his income as child support because she thought it was only fair since I would be spending most of my time with her and would only be seeing him on the weekends. Before his promotion, since they had similar income and shared custody, my dad didn't have to pay any child support, but after that, he agreed to my mom's demand because he thought that it was fair as well since now he had a significantly higher income, and it was true that she would be taking care of me for most of the time. After that, he had his suspicions that maybe the money wasn't going into taking care of me, and he had even spoken to my mother about it several times, but she had always reassured him that she was putting aside the money for my future and eventually that money would make its way back to me. He had just taken her word for it because he did not want to create drama. But after hearing what I had to say about the time that I spent at my mom's place, he wasn't so sure that she was being truthful with him. In fact, he had his fair reasons to doubt her because he did follow her on social media and he had seen that she had made a couple of expensive purchases in the past, and I could vouch for it. In the past couple of years, my mom had been very clever about her splurges, making sure to space them out so that nobody could suspect her of misusing the child support. In the past couple of years, she had bought quite a lot of expensive jewelry, clothes, and accessories for herself. She had also bought really expensive gifts for Rick and Liam in the past, and occasionally for me as well, but most of the time she would just skip buying stuff for me because my dad was already getting me expensive gifts, and she didn't want to spoil me more. Rick and my mom are both middle management at best, so I did find it a tad bit weird that she had suddenly started to be able to afford to splurge on herself, but I just figured that it must have been coming from her savings, and never did I ever even imagine that she had been taking child support from my dad. So now I guess you guys can understand why it's such a dilemma for me, because even if I had any intention of forgiving her eventually and accepting her apologies, I can't take it seriously now because I honestly don't know if she really wants me back or if she wants the child support, because according to the arrangement, my dad had agreed to pay child support until I turned 18. And most importantly, in the past couple of years, every time I had brought up how she had been neglecting me, she had always maintained that she was taking care of me while my dad was too busy with work, and she had a lot of responsibilities like working hard to be able to afford raising me, and even responsibilities towards her new husband and son, which is why I might have felt neglected. But the truth was that she was just trying to be there for everyone, and as her daughter I needed to be more understanding. Now that I know that she had been taking child support from my dad, all of that just feels like gaslighting, because she did not want me to feel like I was actually being neglected, since then I would complain about it to my dad, or worse, leave her, and then she would lose my custody as well as the child support checks. She obviously did not need to work very hard to be able to afford raising me or the kind of lifestyles that she wanted at all, because 20% of my dad's income is a lot, and I feel cheated that she had been feeding me so much BS for the past couple of years. And at the same time, I also feel kind of bad for her, because regardless of everything, she is still my mom, and I feel like I'm getting really confused about what to do. I wanted to do the right thing for myself, but I also don't want to hurt my mother in a way that I cannot take back. I just don't know what to think anymore. And on top of that, my mom just keeps apologizing and telling me to come back. She's pretty much just begging me at this point, even though I haven't been responding to her. I also have to think about how I want to finish high school, because if I start living with my dad, I won't be able to go to the same school since the commute will be too much for me. So there are a lot of things to factor in here, but mostly I just genuinely want to know if I'll be doing the right thing by moving in with my dad and letting my mom go for my life. Am I the AITA for wanting to leave my mom and her new family behind and move in with my dad instead? Update 1. Hey, so I would just like to say to everyone who had been saying that my dad is an absentee father and stuff, that's really not true. He's always been there for me emotionally. He just has to work really hard as well to give me the kind of future that I want, and I really don't mind, to be honest. In fact, he had even offered for me to come along with him when he initially had to move, but at the time I was way too attached to my life here to consider moving with him. I did not want to leave my mom, my school, and my friends behind, and I chose to stay here, so he had to make the best of the situation as well. Even recently, when I had been complaining to him about being neglected by my mom, he had offered for me to come stay with him, but when he realized that I didn't want to leave my school and my friends, that's when he started motivating me to stay with my mom instead, because he just wanted to be there for me. At no point have I ever felt neglected by him or that he doesn't want me around, so I just wanted to get that out of the way since I didn't want anybody thinking badly of him. And honestly, one of the biggest reasons why I had continued to stay with my mom was because before the divorce we had had a fairly normal relationship like any mother and daughter do. It was only after she started dating Rick that she started to change, and her priorities became different. For the past couple of years, I've been torn between choosing what is comfortable for me, which is staying with my mom and living the life that I've always known, or doing what's right for me, moving in with my dad and starting over. But now that it's been a couple of days since I made my post here, and I've gone through the comments and spoken to a couple of people, I feel like I have some clarity on what I really want to do and what I should do. In fact, this is something that I should have done a long time back. But yeah, I'm going to move in with my dad on a permanent basis. I had to think about it for a really long time, and I spoke about it with my closest friends at length, and they all agreed that this is the best way for me to go right now. All of them are going to miss me, and I'm going to miss them, but that's no reason for me to keep compromising and putting up with life at my mom's place, since it's become very clear to me that her priorities are Rick and Liam, and not me. It was honestly a tough call because I've known these people my entire life. My friends and I have been together since kindergarten, and that's why I was so attached to them. But at some point, I was going to have to leave anyway because we can't all stay together forever. And honestly, at this point, wanting to stay in a place where I'm clearly not wanted just so that I can be close to my friend seems childish and stupid. I needed to choose what was best for me, and so that's what I did. Luckily, I have very understanding and supportive friends, and they pushed me to do the right thing. I should have known that they were always going to want this for me, even if it came at the cost of having me move away from them, because I can't imagine anybody else helping me sneak out of my house and make a run for it and then even drive me to my destination for 4 hours in the middle of the night. I'm truly grateful that I have such wonderful friends. But now I'm going to have to start again. I have spoken to my dad about it, and he's already in talks with his lawyer. It's bound to be a relatively straightforward process because since I am 16 now, I can decide who I want to live with, and if I don't even stay with my mom, there's no child support to be paid. She's already not going to be getting any alimony since she is married again, so basically her funds are getting cut off. After she finds out about that, then I'm going to get to know if she really just wants me back or if it's the money that was the motivating factor behind her constantly texting me and apologizing to me, begging me to come back. She doesn't know any of it yet since my dad is still speaking to his lawyer and the arrangements are being made and stuff, but she's going to find out in a couple of days, and well, let's just see how she reacts to that. On the basis of her reaction, I'm going to decide if I want to stay in touch with her or if I want her out of my life completely. Until then, I'm going to continue ignoring all her messages and phone calls because I really don't have anything to say to her right now, especially after the incident after which I had to leave because now that I think about it, she should have supported me, given the fact that I was not even wrong in that situation to be upset with Liam since he literally had been stealing from me. I don't understand why it was such a moral and ethical dilemma for her. I mean, Rick decided to defend his kid even when he was wrong, and everyone knew it, but my mom couldn't even stand up for myself, knowing I was right. The more I think about it, the more upset I feel that Liam and Rick's feelings were more of a priority for her than me. Anyway, what's done is done. Update 2. Hey, so a couple of days ago, my mom finally found out from my dad and his lawyer that I had decided that I was going to stay with my dad, and she was not going to be receiving child support anymore. My dad and his lawyer had filed a petition to get primary custody of me, but my mom will still retain her visitation rights. She could contest it, but it would be kind of pointless because now that I'm 16, who I decide to live with carries more weight. So it was not surprising that she did not protest any of this. She only decided to stop texting or calling me. I had kind of seen this coming because now that she knew that she was not going to be getting any money from my dad anymore, there was no point in trying to get me back. No child support, no me. That's how it was, I guess. I won't lie, it was really upsetting for me to realize that the only reason she had wanted me around for the past couple of years after she met Rick was because she wanted the money. But anyway, at least I found out where I stood with her, and now I can make my decision about whether I want her in my life, and the answer is I don't. I don't think I'll be reaching out to her ever again, and I'm glad that I'm moving away. I'm still going to try and go back occasionally so that I can meet my friends, but apart from that, I have nothing left there anymore. My maternal grandparents live in Greece, and I mostly just speak to them on the internet or on phone calls, and they recently found out about whatever had been going on. We are not particularly close, but even then, they had a lot of sympathy for me and acknowledged the fact that what my mom was doing was really wrong. But well, I don't think she cares. Anyway, it's really depressing to talk about that, so I'll move on to something funnier. I recently found out from a couple of friends that a couple of days ago, Liam had a very public fight with his girlfriend, or rather ex-girlfriend, in the cafeteria, and it was humiliating for him. Apparently, she had been ignoring him and had blocked him everywhere after I revealed to her that he had basically been stealing my things so he could give it to her as gifts, and he had been trying to get her to talk to him because they had been together for quite some time. Everyone had found it very weird that they were not on speaking terms anymore, and he kept trying to get her to talk to him, especially when they used to be so close, but nobody knew the reason why because I had left and my friends were not the kind of people who would gossip about stuff like this. But things came out in the funniest way because a couple of days back, while he was trying to get her to talk to him in the cafeteria, she had an outburst and started screaming about what he had done. She totally humiliated him in front of everyone by revealing how disgusting it was of him to be stealing stuff from me and pretending that he had purchased it all for her with his own money. And since then, he has pretty much become the laughingstock of the school. I guess it's just karma because Rick totally defended him, but however, I know that our school is not going to be so gentle and forgive him. Anyway, he had it coming, and I'm glad that this happened. I'm a bit sad that I wasn't there to witness all this in person, but well, you can't have everything, I guess. Update 3. Hey, so it's been a little over 2 months since I left home, and everything is slowly falling into place. I've been very busy for the past couple of weeks because I had to start at a new school here, and most of my credits were transferred, but I'm still going to have to work really hard to catch up because I joined in the middle of the term. I know I'm going to be able to make it though, so I'm not very stressed. I've already started making new friends though, so that's nice. People are not that bad here, and honestly, it's pretty much just like my old high school. I do miss my old friends quite a lot, actually. I've been back home with my dad a couple of times now because there was a lot of paperwork to be done since I'm moving schools, and also because we need to collect everything that I hadn't been able to pack when I was leaving. I met my mother when I went back home, and she was very cold to me. She pretended like she wasn't even interested in looking at me, but I didn't let that bother me too much. Liam and Rick were much funnier to deal with because they just kept glaring at me and my dad, and it almost felt like they were going to start yelling at us but had to control themselves somehow. I'm sure Liam is not very happy about the fact that he was publicly humiliated because I told his girlfriend the truth about all the gifts that she had been receiving, but well, he probably shouldn't have been a thief if he didn't want to get exposed as a thief. Anyway, I'm settling in well in my new life, and I'm much happier here with my dad. He's quite busy with work most of the time, but when he is sitting down with me, all his time is completely for me, and I never feel neglected here. It's a nice change of pace from what I was used to for the last couple of years. Looking back, I think I made the right choice. Now on to the next story. Story 10. My dying father finally told me why he hated me my entire life. He never wanted a son and wanted me to give me up for adoption, but my mother wouldn't let him. I have 3 sisters that I love and a mother I adore. Not always, though. I hated them when I was younger because while my father would yell at me or belittle me for everything possible, they were the apples of his eyes. I did my best at school, in karate, nothing impressed him. Not when I earned a full scholarship to a prestigious university, not when I was the valedictorian of my year group, not even at 26 when I managed to start my own small company that has grown considerably since. No matter what I did, I was made to feel worthless, less than a person, good for nothing, useless, a failure. I have lingering issues about it to this day. When I was younger, all I wanted just once was for my father to say, "I'm proud of you." Nothing even close. He doted on my sisters and mother, though, and I'm not proud to say I hated them for it as much as I hated him. How dare they get away so lightly? How dare they get his smiles and laughter and kind words when all I had to get was cruelty? It took me a long time to finally begin a relationship with my sisters or mom that wasn't the jealous, angry son. Today we are all very close. I love them to death and would do anything for them. Some time ago, my father was diagnosed with cancer. He's had other issues as well, suffered through 2 heart attacks and a stroke, and it seems as if his body can't carry on anymore. He's dying and I don't care. I don't have it in me to care, and if he died, I could live the rest of my life having never seen him before he passed or knowing that I won't attend his funeral. He wasn't present at my wedding either. I did not invite him, which was very noticeable to many of my family members, but I didn't care. I'd found a woman who loved me and that I loved, and I wanted to share the day with the other important people in my life that I love or strongly like. My uncle was always sympathetic to my cases growing up. My father, his older brother, was an asshole to him, and he understood why I wouldn't want my father there, even while other family members thought I should have still invited him. Here's the thing, he wants to see me. He probably has only a few months left and now wishes to see me. My wife, mother, and sisters all want me to pay a visit to him. Well, my wife thinks I should go just once. She isn't pressuring me. She knows my history with him and says if I decide not to go, that's it then. My mother and sisters, however, do think I should go and have all spoken to me several times in the past month about this. The only person who's laid off bugging me about it is my older sister. I'm the second child, she's 34, and she was the one who saw my father be a dick to me from as far back as she or I can remember. My 2 other sisters are several years younger, 26 and 25. We met recently to talk about it, my older sister and I, and for the first time in years I broke down crying. I literally just let it out. I told her I can't do it. I tried to put everything in the past, but I can't. I hate that man and what he did to me mentally. I can't forgive him, and she says she understands. She said she'd speak to my mother and sisters. However, my mother and sisters tend to be very pushy anyway. Do you all think I should go at least once? Update. So I went to see my dad, and it basically went like shit. Caved. I fucking caved and decided, fuck it. I'll see what he wants. Maybe this is something worth hearing. I visited the hospital by myself, no wife, no mom, no sisters, just him and I. He looked old and tired, And just as I predicted, I didn't find it in me to be angry. This wasn't the man I remembered. This was just some old, broken man. It would have been a waste of my time to feel angry, and yet I did. I was so pissed off because I couldn't stand across from him eye to eye and let him see that the son he treated like dog shit had built a wonderful life for himself. We didn't say anything to each other for around an hour. Then eventually, I found my voice and said, "You know this is the last time we'll ever see each other, right?" No response. Then he replied, "I know." So I asked him, "Why now?" Why did he want to see me so badly that he had to send a message through my mother for me? And here is where I learned that my existence was fucking all to him. He admitted that he did it just to give my mom closure. She didn't ask him to do it, but he knew she wanted it. So I asked him why he treated me the way he did my whole life, and he replied, "I never wanted a son. Never had any interest in one." Fucking hurt, but I kept listening, and he kept speaking. He said that in the first few years of my life, he tried his best to care about me, but eventually he realized he couldn't. Then came the final nail in the coffin of my relationship with that man. "I never loved you, but I didn't hate you either. I just didn't care for you because I never wanted a son. I wanted to give you up for adoption when you were younger, but your mother would never have forgiven me. So I did my best to push you aside, and you would always try and get my approval for stuff. I felt bad at times, but I just didn't care for you." By that time, I was crying. Me, a 31-year-old man, left my dying father in his hospital room and went to my car crying. I could have gone my whole life not knowing that shit. My mom, my sisters, my wife, and my dad. I'm just so pissed right now. There was a part of me that hoped we would bury the hatchet. Nope. I just learned he never gave a fuck. I will never speak of my father again. I will not attend his funeral or visit his grave when he dies. I'll be at the bar drinking because the fucker is gone from this world, and I will do everything I can to be the father he never was. Edit. I just want to say thanks to everyone for your kind words, both in comments and PMs. They really helped a lot, particularly while I was hungover this morning and laying in bed thinking about life. Also, to the stranger who gave me gold, thank you. Never had that before, and it was quite unexpected. I've got a ways to go still. I feel like yesterday opened up wounds I didn't even realize had never really healed, and I'll be talking to my wife about it and most likely a professional as well. I won't cut my mom or sisters out. I am not angry at them. Their experiences with my father were different from my own, and I do not fault them for that. However, right now, the best thing for me is just to not be around them as much, so I don't think they'll be seeing/hearing from me for some time. Once again, I sincerely thank everybody. It was your comments and PMs that made me realize, yeah, it hurts like shit, but I can't let him have any more power over me. I'm in the prime of my life, and I've built a nice life for myself. I don't need a dying man's approval anymore because I've done the best I could for so long without it anyway. So here's hoping things will get better soon. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.